Okay.
Okay, let's call to order the August 5th, 2020 Springboro Board of Education meeting. Roll call.
Stuckey. Oh, sorry. Stuckey. Anderson.
Here.
Fab.
Here.
Palage.
Here.
Goods.
Here.
Okay. Item 1.1, please stand for the pledge. Sarah, do you have the flag?
Yeah.
All right, there it is. I see it. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item 1.2, adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion or questions?
Okay. Anderson.
Yes.
Fab.
Yes.
Palage.
Yes.
Goods.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. We'll go to item 1.3, approval of the July 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes.
I'll motion.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Okay. Anderson.
Yes.
Fab.
Yes.
Palage.
Yes.
Goods.
Yes.
Okay, item 2.1, the Springboro Education Association report. Is there anybody here from the SDA for the report? And if there is, I guess they would have to use the chat feature in order to alert Ms. Floyd to unmute you. I'm guessing we don't have anybody.
I don't see anything. I don't see anything.
We
Right.
can come back to it if we have somebody. So then item 2.2, the Springboro Classified Employees Association report. Anybody from the SCEA? And again, use the chat feature so that Ms. Floyd could unmute you if there is anybody with a report. Okay. Item 2.3 is prearranged public participation. I do not believe we have anybody that is prearranged to speak this evening. So item 2.4, I'll go over this right now. Item 2.4 covers public participation for any of the agenda items that are not part of the work session. So any of the business meeting items. So these would be sort of items 4.1 on. There will be a chance in work session for public participation, for comments. Similar to the way that we've run the last couple of meetings, we'll do that at the end of the work session. So there will be an opportunity to talk about the calendar and the reopening plan in the work session. But if anybody has any comments on any of the business meeting agenda items, again, from the treasurer's report on, you could do that now. And the way this is going to work in both this section and also the work session public participation, because we are meeting remotely, if you could use the chat feature, if you're on the Zoom, if you can use the chat feature to alert us that you'd like to speak, please put your name and your address, and then we'll go ahead and when we gather those at the appropriate time, we'll unmute you so you can talk. If you've dialed in and you're not actually on the Zoom, we'd ask that you please send an email if you'd like to participate. You'll have to let us know which phone number it is so that we can unmute you. But you can send an email to Scott Marshall, that's smarshall@springboro.org. So if you'd like to be recognized in the public participation and you're not on the Zoom, so instead of using the chat feature, you could email Mr. Marshall and we will make sure that, that we get to you at the appropriate time. So with all that said, is there any public participation on the work session items? Are we seeing anything come through the chat?
No, I don't think so. I think the public participation was going to be on maybe a agenda item, and then the public participation.
Yeah, that's right. No, I just didn't know if anybody had any on the agenda items. Then we can
No,
move
I
into
don't
the
see
work
anything yet.
session. Okay. So then we will move into the work session. And before I turn it over to Mr. Hook, I just wanted to remind people of a couple things that we'll get into. So the way this will work again is that we'll go through these items. And again, you can see after we've had a chance for the board and the administration to talk through items 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, we will have time after that board discussion and the administration discussion and item 3.4 for public participation. And so we'll allow for some comments and questions at that point. Again, we'd ask that you keep those to 3 minutes, just because I suspect we'll have a lot of folks that would like to participate. And so in the interest of everybody's time, we want to make sure that we keep those to 3 minutes. Again, please state your name and your address when we get to that point. The other thing that I did want to highlight is I know there'd been some conversation about why we're meeting remotely, and there's a couple of different things. As you can see, there's only 4 of us board members this evening, and I'm actually out of town. And so in the interest of trying to make sure that we had more than 3, that was one of the reasons we moved this remote. And the other thing is that we're trying to, since the last time we met, there's obviously some things that have changed at the state level in terms of the statewide mask mandate and some of the other guidance that's to be reiterated from the governor and from the county. And I know there are some questions about, well, you're meeting remotely, and yet here we are talking about reopening school. I just want to clarify that we're making these decisions based on the fact that it's August 5th. We're going to talk here a little bit about the calendar, which calls for us to actually begin the in-person instruction on September 8th. And as you'll see, that's actually going to be with a phased-in start approach. And so we're really, 4 to 6 weeks away from talking about when we will have students in the buildings. And so I think if there's one thing that we can all agree on is that we will likely get new information, new mandates, and new guidance in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so again, the decision about tonight's meeting was made, with the information and the guidance that we have at hand here on August 5th. So there is obviously a lot that can change. And I think as you see in the presentations from the administration this evening, there are some things that have changed in our reopening plans and our calendar since the last time we spoke. And so again, it is a reminder to everybody that the situation is evolving, and we're doing the best we can to deal with the new information as it comes. So with all that said, I will turn it over to Mr. Hook for item 3.1, a discussion of a resolution to recognize that school district employees are essential employees providing essential services.
Jamie, can I say something really quick? Some people are having problems getting in, and sometime with Zoom, if you try different numbers, because she said our limit is 500 and we're only 300, well, only, but we're at 300. So people should be able to call in, and there was multiple numbers in the invitation. So if you're getting texts from people that you're not able to get in, have them try some of the other numbers, and hopefully that will help them be able to join the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Lisa.
Yep.
Okay. You ready for me?
Yep. Mr. Hook.
Okay. Item 3.1, the discussion of the resolution. The reason I'm bringing this forward is came out of a discussion that we've had with our law firm, our school legal advice, as well as just kind of what some of our other county superintendents are doing. And the real rationale for this is we don't know what lies ahead of us yet. In the event that, let's say, we're ordered to close, an example is, then by our staff being essential employees, we could bring them in. They could come into their own classrooms, do remote lessons here without necessarily the hassle of, are you an essential employee or not? So it all came out of last spring when we were ordered to stay at home. So this kind of gives our employees and us the ability to bring our people in specifically for things like doing their remote lessons in their own classrooms, if that were ever to happen again.
Does it require them to? Like if they chose to work, if we adopted this, if they chose to work from home, like if they felt that they were compromised, or if they felt it was a better condition for them to work at home, would they still have that ability to do that if they work that out with their
They'd have to work it out with our people. Yes, they'd have to let us know what the scenario is, but yes.
So
we could. Now, would I? no, the ability, the biggest thing I want to be able to do is, because if our employees have children and they're forced into that capacity, we get that, and we'll work with those individually. But I just want to give that opportunity to those teachers, those other people in our classified union also, especially our teachers, to be able to come in and use the equipment, use the things that they have in their classroom. So sometimes it's a little easier. For some teachers, it might not be, but if we get ordered to stay at home, then it just gives us that flexibility.
Yeah, without doing this, I would imagine if our buildings are ordered to be closed and we have not done this sort of designation, then we're not allowed to have anybody in the building. So I think, to Mr. Hook's point, this gives us the flexibility that it becomes an option. Doesn't mean that we're not going to force people.
Right. No.
You know, we're going to work obviously with people, because
Absolutely.
I know that if that were the situation, you'd be dealing with childcare issues, those sorts of things, but at least it gives us the option.
Correct.
So there is no requirement if a staff worked with their supervisor, even if it was for kids at home because their student was being remotely taught. This doesn't, our administration isn't going to come back to this and say, because you're an essential worker, you have to come in. This is just giving the flexibility for those teachers that feel they can teach best
Otherwise
in that environment.
Otherwise you can't be in the building.
Well, the other thing is, if
closed.
you're an essential worker, you also you move to the front of the line for daycare, childcare under the current statutes. So it's a benefit to our staff as well. Okay.
Any other discussion or questions on item 3.1 from the board? Okay. And we can go to item 3.2, discussion the calendar. This is also you, Mr. Hook, the 2021 calendar.
Okay. The calendar. Part of and in my short time here, and a couple of days anyway, one of the things that I think is pretty critical, and I think what's happening across Ohio and a variety of places, is this whole restart and getting this thing moving forward is changing on us so quickly. It's a moving target. But I think the smartest thing for us to do initially is to move the start date for our calendar back. So for those watching in particular, we would be looking at a post Labor Day start on September 8th, Tuesday, September 8th. What we would want to do initially and we've talked about a variety of ways to do this, going a week, 2 weeks, what's best. I think we finally landed yesterday or the day before with our administrators that maybe the smartest thing to do here is to just that first week, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, is to do a phased in approach. Those still count as full school days. Okay. So, and we will be posting this out there as well on our website. But September 8th and 9th, we would have 50% of our students K-12 in school. Those students with their last names A through K would come on the 8th and the 9th. That would be Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay. And students with the last names L through Z would come in on the 10th and the 11th. Not any remote learning, but basically by cutting the staff in half, that allows us to spend a lot of time. We have a lot of new protocols at each building that they're going to have to learn and get used to. Everything from changing classrooms to how we're going through the lunch line, how we're spreading as much as we can. The classroom protocols, hygiene, sanitary, the list goes on and on. It's just not going to be a usual start. So that first week would be a phased in So any one day, it's just got the 50%. We talked about some other options for the week of the 14th, but we thought that was more confusing. And so our goal is to be fully 100% in on the 14th instead of going to any type of hybrid or reduced model, only because there's some inherent complications with that. We still are working on that model, and if we're ever ordered by the governor to go to 50% capacity, we'll have that as a model as well. So that's the startup. Teachers that are watching, the first day for teachers would be the 20th of August. So we have some time, a couple of weeks of really heavy professional development in remote learning and a variety of other things as well. They have to learn all the protocols and see things in place as well. So those are going to be pretty important dates for us. So again, for parents, for students, September 8th. What it does to the rest of the calendar is we have tried to keep it as much the same as possible. So breaks are basically in the same place. What it does do, and it's a simple thing of counting days and hours, it does push us to that week right after Memorial Day. So we will be in session on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of June with the last day for teachers on the 4th, that last work day. So that's the that's the adjustment, and we had to go into that because we couldn't rectify the hours, especially for kindergarten, to be able to meet those minimum standards. And that could all go out the window if they force the close down, but at least that gives us a calendar that delays us a little bit, lets us see a little bit more of what's going on as this rapidly evolves. And so that's in essence the calendar as we know. There proms, those kind of things, graduation, we're hopefully to keep those on the same dates, but we'll have information about that forthcoming as well. Any questions about the
Discussion
calendar?
or questions from the board around the calendar?
So during that time, the teachers and staff come in on the 20th. I know there clearly will be training around COVID and the different protocol of what we're doing in our buildings to keep the students safe. What are we doing to prepare for if the governor calls for a shutdown, a complete shutdown? What type of training are we going to have in place for the students that aren't already online?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'll go over that in my next section a little bit, but yes,
Okay.
that we're also going to be training on remote. And part of what in my next discussion item on the reopening is the difference between virtual and remote. If we get shut down, those kids, the students that have elected to be in school will move to what we would call remote. And so those teachers would continue. It's going to be a modified schedule. We're not asking people to be online for 8 or 6 hours and 6.5 hours or whatever it is. It'll be a modified schedule, but then we would have that as well as recording, so that for those kids that for whatever reason couldn't be at that class, that maybe they're babysitting somebody, I don't know, for whatever reason. But yes, there will be some training for that. Not some, there'll be quite a bit of training for remote learning, which is for those kids that are in or elected the in-school option.
And if we were to be told, like in the next week by the governor, that we needed to go to 100% remote, would everybody go to 100% remote under the same model? And do we have time, like, can we still do training with our teachers before, like, would we still wait till after Labor Day? And then would we train everybody towards that?
Well, no, I still think we're going to have a group that settles in on the virtual, which will be the option B or the second option that parents can choose. If you're going to go that one will move in that direction. Okay, even under closure. And then we'll have the other mass, the majority that are going in school, they'll be remote. So again, making sure that we're talking the same thing. When I say virtual is what we're doing with option B. When parents select option B. Option A is in school, and if we get closed, then they are remote. Okay, so yes, lots of training with that, but the kids that have selected to be virtual anyway, whether we're in school physically or get closed, we're working that piece as its own entity, a school within a school, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, because I'd imagine if we were ordered into something like that, I mean, it's a situation where potentially we could come back halfway through. So again, I think,
Yes.
That's where I think I think you kind of have to either going
You got to
the
keep one
VLA
going. Yeah.
track versus the other, because that, exactly, we could come back in person halfway through.
And the
That
flip
makes
side to
sense.
that,
So
yeah, the flip side to that too is we don't know how long that would last. Exactly. And if we get forced, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but already, there's one thing is if we get closed by the governor. There's another thing if we get closed countywide. It's another thing if we had this massive breakout or infection. We don't have enough teachers that we can't run either one, a building, or two, the district, in which we would shut down. If we shut down, we're not opening up one day later. At the very least, I don't even know if you could do it any more than 2 to 3, 4 weeks at a slot. So if we get shut down, we're probably in it for my best estimation would be close to a month. Okay, as things change, and if we were able to, obviously we want to reopen as fast as we can, safely, of course. And I'll go over that a little bit more when we get into the next item. Anything else about the calendar? I think we're
discussion or questions, on the calendar. And just as a reminder, if I see some questions popping up in the chat, we'll get to those when we get to 3.4 after the discussion items here with the board and the administration. We'll go back to those questions. So just wanted to let people know we see those, and we'll get to them at the appropriate time. So any other board questions, comments on the calendar?
No.
When will we have confirmation around, I know especially graduation is a biggie for planning purposes. When will we have, Larry, you and I had talked earlier, and I thought that you had confirmed for sure graduation. Is that questionable, or is that?
I want to my goal is to keep everything the same. I want to double check with our administration just to make sure that we can keep it on the same date. If not, we're going to make that decision very quickly. So, in the next few days.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or discussion?
No.
Okay. You want to move then to the reopening plan, Mr. Hook?
Yes, I have a little bit of a slide presentation. I got somebody helping me here a little bit. So,
I'll share my screen here.
Mhm.
Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yep, we can see it.
Let me put it in presentation mode. All right. Everyone can see that good?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, Larry, just let me know when you want me to change.
Go ahead and roll to the third slide. So we just already talked about the academic calendar. So I wanted to have that there.
Will
Okay.
this be posted on the website later so people don't have to write it down?
Absolutely. Yes, please. Yeah, we will post this. Thank you.
Tonight's meeting's being recorded as well. All this information will be posted. but
Absolutely.
It's being recorded. So
Yeah, the information for the academic calendar will be posted to the website, and parents will be getting an email tonight after the board meeting about this.
on the calendar.
Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay. Good enough. So as I start into this, the reopening up, let me first make sure that we're talking about the same things, because I think it's really critical as we move into this, and I share where we're at in the reopen plan, that we're talking apples to apples. And so the very first thing is the working definitions that we're using. These are the ones that we have been given by the Warren County Department of Health. So I think it's really critical that we're on the same page with this, okay? And I want to publicly thank Dwayne Stansberry, the director, and assistant over there, Dustin, who's been faithfully at every superintendent meeting the last, it seems like forever, but last 3 months anyway. These weekly meetings with our superintendents trying to get us reopened, and the work that they're doing. I appreciate how hard they have been working with us. So thank you for that. But some of these definitions are important. The isolation piece, that is when somebody tests, whether it's student, anybody, tests positive. Okay, they're placed in isolation. And who does this? It's the Warren County Department of Health, Combined Department of Health. The school doesn't do that. The school doesn't mandate it. Okay. So what happens is somebody's sick or they test positive. At some point, they're required to tell the health director, the Department of Health, and then they contact us pretty quickly. It can work a little bit in reverse if we know something's happened. A lot of, let's say a parent finds out and the doctor says, you know, my kid tested positive, we're going to confirm that. And then that starts the contact tracing that is done through the Department of Health, Warren County Department of Health. But isolation is what happens is that person is isolated, typically at home. Okay. They're there and really they're isolated for a minimum of 10 days. And what 10 days is really from the onset of symptoms, or if they're asymptomatic when they test positive. That's how they start those 10 days. Okay. Now, at the end of those 10 days, and I think they have to do a daily check-in with the health department. So if they can go 10 or 24 hours without a fever, not using any kind of fever reducing medicines, and there's a reduction in their symptoms, and a reduction in their symptoms, they're cleared. They're technically cleared. Okay. Now, somebody gets really sick and obviously it's longer, that's another story. They have to be a reduction in symptoms and they have to have no fever for a minimum of 24 hours. That's what isolation is. Now, when you're in isolation, obviously they're contact tracing who you've been around. And they've done that checking. That leads me into what exposed is. Okay. Again, exposed, okay, is 15 continuous minutes within 6 feet of a person that is diagnosed with COVID. So an example is, and one of the reasons that we're trying to get everybody to understand is don't mingle long. So if we have people passing in the hallways, for an example, that's not a continuous 15-minute time. So every kid who happened to test positive, every kid that he passed in the hallway is not considered exposed and will not be required to quarantine. Okay, so part of the contact tracing is determining during that isolation or exposure time, who did that kid come in contact with? How long at any one time? Was it within that 6-foot magical space, I guess? Okay, and that's the definite working definition that we have to deal with. Okay, so everything that we're trying to do typically then is try to keep people outside of that 15-minute time frame. It's I don't want to say arbitrary, but it's just a point that the CDC as well as the health department are using, and so that's what we use.
Eric, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yep.
I know there was a comment in there about people maybe still having trouble joining. Ms. Floyd has told us that we're not at the capacity, so I'm not really sure where there's an issue, because we're only showing, I guess, 300 in the meeting. But with that said, there is an option for Ms. Floyd to turn on, I guess, a Facebook Live option with the meeting, which I'm okay with. We obviously want folks to be able to see the discussion in real time, and so I just wanted to alert you that I guess Ms. Floyd is going to try turning that on at this moment, just so everybody is aware.
Okay, I'm going to click on it. I'm not sure where it goes or how people can watch it, but I'm going to click on it and see what happens here.
Uncharted territory.
Yes.
Yeah, we are showing that we're under the capacity of 500. So
Okay.
I'm not sure why people are having. So if you're hearing from anybody that they're having trouble, they can keep trying to join that way. But if not, we'll try this Facebook Live.
Let me ask Scott real quick. Sorry to put you on the spot here, Scott, but when I just clicked on the Facebook Live, I did make you a co-host. If you go down to that more line at the bottom and click Facebook Live, it takes you to Facebook, but it wants you to sign into your Facebook. And I know you have the Springboro Facebook, so you might have to actually do it. So at the bottom, click on the more Facebook Live and see if it lets you sign into Springboro's school's Facebook.
I may have to stop sharing my screen to do that.
Okay.
Hang on 1 second. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Sorry about this, guys. This is new. I'm surprised.
I appreciate everybody's patience. We're trying to make sure that we get allow everybody to participate and see the discussion. So we'll just take a minute to try and get this.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I do not see a more.
Just a reminder, if you're sending questions in the chat, again, when we get to that portion of the meeting, if you could please put your name and your address. Similar to the way that we conduct public participation at the in-person meetings, that is the way that we handle it. So just a reminder, if you could do that in the chat as well, when we get to that point in the meeting, we'll go ahead and call on the folks that have done that in the chat.
Yeah, Tara, I do not see anything that says where I can do that.
Okay, let me see if I can.
If we can't make it work, I mean, again, we're trying to do this on the fly. Again, we can have people try to keep joining. Again, it is showing that we're under our limit. The meeting is recorded. We'll get to, I think here probably later in the presentation, some of the ways that people are going to be able to get their questions answered. Obviously we'll have a time for questions this evening, but we are going to have some opportunities for people to have questions at the building level. And obviously, being able to connect with their building administrators to ask questions as well. So again, I think people will have ample opportunity. So sounds like people are saying that the max is 300, not 500, Tara, is what people are saying in the chat. So.
Okay, I'll try to work with that in the back.
Okay.
So,
okay. Well, we'll just go back then to Scott sharing. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. I'm just going to keep rolling here a little bit. So we talked about exposed, and we know what that is. Okay. And quarantine. So if you're exposed, then the health department will ask you to quarantine for 14 days. Okay. Doesn't mean you have the virus. It doesn't mean you're going to get the virus. It means that you were exposed by 15 minutes or more to someone that did test positive, and you were within 6 that person for that length of time. That'll trigger you to be quarantined. Okay. So I'm saying this because as I get into the opening, it's important that, let's say, a student tests positive in a classroom, the whole classroom will not be quarantined. Okay. Now, depending how far away you are from that student in terms of where your seat is, could. So it could impact somebody in front of you, somebody behind you, somebody to the left of you, somebody to the right of you. Okay, that's just an example. Okay, so that's how that would work. Okay, we will have a letter for those classes that will go out that will say to a particular class, if a kid is tests positive, that someone in the class has. But unless you hear from us or the health department, you are not considered exposed or expected to be in quarantine. So I want to make sure people understand that just because a child tests positive doesn't automatically put a whole group of students. Now, that's part of the contact tracing. You know, obviously there's more classes in the secondary level. There's other pieces, but that's what the county will be doing. We'll help them because we'll have seating charts for virtually everything. And so that's how that kind of rolls. So I wanted to make sure we had that. Talking about also in general discussion, I wanted to make sure as far as, and I want to be really forward with everybody here and very transparent. And go ahead, Scott, move the screen. Talking about being in school, you know, we say distancing and, you know, social distancing. This is the reality. Okay, getting 6 feet of social distancing at a school is not very likely, and it will probably not happen in too many instances. Now, it's a building by building scenario. It's how big is the walls within a particular classroom. For a good number, if not the majority of rooms at the high school, in any particular classroom, we may be able to set 6 feet apart. Okay, but the reality is in the junior high, our elementaries, much tighter. That's, you know, there's just not the same kind of space. So you may be talking 3 feet from nose to nose, as they're saying, we're going to spread as far as we can. But I don't want people to think that when we say social, we're going to distance as much as possible. That just means automatically that's 6 feet. The reality is that's going to be nearly impossible to do. And that's part of the dilemma that people are running into as they try to spread these kids out within a building. Obviously, the ones that come to mind real quick are transportation and classrooms. We just talked a little bit about that, but more about the transitions. You know, when you start talking about transportation, we wouldn't be able to provide transportation if we did pure social distancing. It's not feasible. We can't buy more buses. We're not able to do it. Okay. That's the simple reality. Okay, kids will still be in there, but they will be required to wear masks upon entering and the whole time that they're on school transportation. They have to wear masks. So I just don't want people to think that, oh gosh, we'll be spread out. You can't spread out on a bus. Can't do it. Not provide transportation. Transition in hallways. I kind of touched on this before. We're not working with the exposed definition and what it means to be exposed. You know, these kids are not, as long as we keep moving, which is one of the things that we're going to train kids on. You just got to keep moving, move from one class to the other. You know, as you pass kids, you just keep on going. That way you don't get, you know, in that position of being exposed because of the time thing. So transitions are not as you know, any situation is an area of concern, but the transition, because of the time involved, should not present a problem for exposure. Lunches, we're spreading as much as we can there as well. We'll be using stages. Those will be answered individually too by building. Different buildings are able to spread differently. Some better than others. Just depends again on the physical spaces that we have and the number of kids that we're doing that. Lunch itself is going to be a little bit different. More, you know, there's no more buffet type of lunches. So just kind of the new individually developed, you know, individual lunches that are packed. So there's less touching, there's less of that going on. Recess, obviously that's not a secondary issue, but obviously at the elementary, that will be also addressed. We're going to try to move as much as we can. You know, we're going to try to teach our kids not to be staying in groups long. So we have to learn some physical etiquette with our youngest children as well. Which brings me to one other point that I wanted to put on here is cleaning. We will be cleaning surfaces often. What I can tell you is that, and I think I'll probably mention it again later, is the electrostatic disinfectants that we are going to be implementing this year on all high-touch areas, desks, etc. That way it doesn't require us to wipe a desk down every period. This product will allow us to spray, and because it's an electrostatic charge to it, it adheres to the surface. It'll work around underneath some of the surfaces, especially on desks, especially on playground equipment. It is said to be guaranteed from 60 to 90 days, but we're going to do it at least every 30 just to make sure that it stays covered the best that we can. Are there exceptions? Sure. Somebody gets sick, we're going to go back and double, you know, spray and treat an area like that. So that, hopefully that helps our teachers and parents' concerns about, oh gosh, they just when it came into that next class and somebody sits down. That disinfectant, obviously it's dried, but it adheres and it's still actively killing not just coronavirus, but other viruses as well. So we're going to be cleaning all those high-touch surfaces often. So I want to make sure, and I know as a parent, that would be important to hear so I wanted to make sure. So that goes into the next slide a little bit. Our major goal. Our goal is obviously to have school. We believe that is the best learning environment. 5 days a week, face-to-face with a teacher, and that interaction. That is the best thing that we can do. We know that. That is the best way for kids to learn. We know that. And that is what our goal is, and that is how we're driving forward towards what, obviously there's some things that we just don't know. We don't have a crystal ball to see what's going to happen. We just don't yet. But we're going to do everything we can to get to that point, not only starting, but to stay in school. Okay. And that's going to take us, you know, all working together on this. Okay. Some of our protocols I've talked about, you know, and safety protocols and teaching kids proper hygiene and just that new norm. It's different. We've all had to learn how to do that. I think it's just critical that we understand, and I saw one of the questions pop up about masks. Yeah, one of the safety protocols is masks. Okay, the governor talked about it. It's K to 12. We're wearing masks. Do I like masks? No. Those are not the fashion statement I really want to make or wear. But if that means I can go one more day of live instruction, then it's worth it to me. If that's what it takes, we'll do it. You know, we've already got information from the CDC and our own health department, and that's who, you know, we're answering to, and they agree. So when we're in school, we're wearing masks. Now, we will take mask breaks. I want people to understand. Will I say every 10 minutes? No, it depends on the scenario, the situation. We're going to encourage some of our classes, if it's a nice day, maybe they might want to do part of their class outside. If they can spread more than 6 feet and get out of the way if they're outside, you know, they may want to take a mask break. But in school, until that order changes from the governor, we are masking. So like I said, it's not, you know, we'll do whatever we have to do to stay in school. That's what I want to do. So if you want to move to the next slide, which brings me to the choices. We're really trying to get up to speed, and not up to speed, but really solidify what our models are. And kind of what we talked about before with Mrs. Babbage earlier. In our Model A, in our first model, parents are choosing want to be in school. Okay, that means in person. That's what this model is. Now, there's some variations that could happen, certainly, but predominantly we want to be in school, students learning in the building with all the safety protocols in place. Okay. If for some unknown reason that I don't know yet, and it hasn't happened, and we're forced and ordered to go into a 50% capacity, you know, it would cause us to do some type of hybrid where you'd be in school 2 days a week and remotely 1 day, and then the other half would come in for 2 days. You both would probably be remote on a Wednesday, but is that a perfect scenario? No, it's not. Cut your learning time, your learning capacity in half, nearly, or at least, you know, significantly. But it's the possibility, and we'll have that in our pocket, and we'll look at that when our teachers come back to make sure that we can pull that off. I hope we don't get to that, but we have to be prepared if we are. Finally, if we're, for all those students that have elected to be in person, and we're ordered to close. Now, how would we get ordered to close? I mentioned that a little bit ago. One, the governor could order it. The health department could order it. Or we decide to do it based on not having enough staff, having an outbreak that seems to be out of control or whatever. Or it could even just be at a building level if it impacts just one building so dramatically that we have to close a building for a period of time. So I want you to know all of those, that remote, online, then when that building closes, they immediately will transition to being remote, where a teacher will be a reduced day quickly, because we can't expect kids to be online for 6.5 hours or 6 3/4 hours, whatever that is. That's a little bit much to expect. So it would be a reduced, but that's a remote scenario, and then that could happen at any time. So we have to be ready for that. So that's also part of the reason that we have the 2 weeks of training at the front end of the school for our teachers, to try to get them as well prepared as we can. Regardless, it'll be much, much better than what we experienced this spring. Everybody was thrown into that, you know, with no idea hardly that it was even coming. So we're going to be better prepared, obviously, this time. So that's our in-person model. So if we go to model B, our second option, that's going to be a virtual learning model. Excuse me. Right now, the virtual learning model for K-5, we have enough teachers that we have talked to and got a group that they will actually develop their own classes remotely. Okay, so that process will start for at least for K-5. We have enough teachers right now. Okay, and synchronous and asynchronous. Basically, what I'm saying here is those kids, the teacher can do it live. Okay, but it'll be recorded. So let's say, especially the younger kids, mom or dad or whatever, they can do the lesson together at a later time. So they can do it at any time. Okay. It's our teachers. These are some of our teachers that have some health issues as well, but it's also, we just have to find enough teachers to be able to do that. We have it currently at the K-5 group, but that group would start and they would continue regardless of what we do with our in-school students. Our in-school students, they're going at their pace as well. And so if we're ordered to close, the virtual group in Model B would continue right on, okay? And we would be switching from face-to-face for the kids that chose Model A, from face-to-face to a online as well, but two different pathways, okay? The hardest part right now for us is the B model. And I want to make sure people, you understand where we're at with that.
Larry, can I add something to
Yes,
this?
sir. Yes.
For the Model B with grades K through 5, you had mentioned recorded, and I just want to be clear that that would be a lesson recorded for later, not the classroom being recorded.
Correct. It is not a live stream course, no.
And so what's
one-on-one with that teacher, yes.
Right. What's listed here is exactly the same as what has already been presented. This is unchanged from what's already been shared with parents.
Okay. The Model B, again, now going to the secondary as well. That's the hardest one. I'll be honest with you. That's the challenge because you run into so many electives. Okay, we've looked at VLA, which some schools are using. It's its own program. It's got a listing of coursework that you can elect to take. Unfortunately, there's limits to it. There's only 1 or 2 or 3 at tops AP courses, for an example. So your advanced kids miss out on those opportunities if they elect and go directly to that, if we use just that model. The other piece, I had a chance to meet yesterday, actually, brought in a staff that was using this VLA program that was developed at Jefferson County ESC. The cost is a little bit more than what they had indicated initially. Indicated it would be $150 per child for all those classes. And yes, you can get all of the curriculum, but what you don't get is a teacher. Okay, to get the teacher now you need $200 for every class that they take. Let's say a high school kid takes 7 classes. It's $250 per class, or $1,700, a little over 17. It's actually $1,750 to be exact. plus the $150 piece for the curriculum. That's $1,900. So it doesn't take long to start doing math here. An elementary might have 5 classes, so now you're talking about $1,400 a kid. Now, we don't have 1,000 kids signed up for it. Right now, we have over 600, a little over 600. But let's say we had 1,000. Easy math is you're talking about 1.4 million to 1.9 million for the cost of this. To just get the curriculum for $150, you still got to have somebody teach it. You know, they can look at it, but they can't, you know, if they have any questions at all, you run into this pretty good sized issue of, okay, how do I get past that? So what we are doing is I'm meeting actually tomorrow with our some teachers and staff, secondary specifically, trying to come up with a better option that we can do. Likely it'll be similar. My guess is it's going to be somewhat similar to the elementary. We're going to have to find enough teachers within our current system, okay, that can develop lessons that follow those kids' schedule. Okay, that'll be the biggest challenge. But to find that, I think we have to work collaboratively with our teachers. You know, they're in this. They want what's best for our kids too. And so I'll probably be a little bit better versed on where we're going with this. So we've thought about it in a variety of ways, doing some type of depending on the teacher schedules that we can get involved with here. I think it'll help us to be able to provide our own teaching and maybe 15-20-minute lesson, okay, that a child that elects to do Model B, this virtual learning, can do. And like I said, then all of our kids that are in, let's say, AP or advanced courses that aren't provided for in the VLA model, then at least we've got those kids taken care of as well. So my goal obviously is to try to have this done sooner rather than later. So by doing that, we are going to push back a decision time frame, you know, right now at least to August 14th instead of the 17th. So August 14th. But now parents know right away, I don't care, I want my kid in school, then that's fine. That's good. The more we know, the sooner we know, the better we can staff this. And that becomes the critical point, okay? So right now, we got a little over 300 in the 6 through 12, but that model is changing, okay, because it's not going to be live streamed. And the rationale for that is real. The major rationale for that is it's 2 different teaching modalities. You know, it sounds easy to just go ahead, throw the camera on the teacher, let them go, you know, don't get the kids and stuff. But the reality is it's 2 different teaching modes. And I've taught both the in-person and I've taught remotely, and it's different. You can do one and when you're focusing on that, or you can do the other one and focus on that. To do them both at the same time is a real challenge. And so we're finding that hybrid for this 6 through 12 being the critical piece for us. And that's what we're putting all of our efforts in, and have been this week. And also, tomorrow we'll have a big meeting about it, and I'm hoping that before the weekend, or the very latest, you know, the first of the week, we'll have that pretty well nailed down. And so that virtual model is evolving a little bit, okay?
Larry, can I ask you a quick question about that?
Yep.
So I'm curious, I know that the survey is not being used, that's definitely, we know we have these students because we don't know exactly what the models look like. But I'm just curious, with us this late in the game exploring a different model where teachers would be teaching remotely our students, should we put out another survey with that information? So what it's going to look like is this for 6th through 12th. With that information, would you do remote or would you do face-to-face? Because I think that we would be getting a lot of different.
We might.
Than
Very
we
well.
currently
But I
have,
guess,
and then we can
what would
plan
the
better.
point of the survey be? I'm trying to, like, what would you be?
Because right now, I don't think we know exactly what type of staffing we really need.
Oh, for staffing. I was just trying to understand what you're
Correct.
trying to accomplish
Correct.
with the survey. You're trying to get from a staffing perspective. I just
Yes.
wasn't
Yeah.
following why you would, okay, got it.
Right.
Yes.
And we talked about that, well, a couple hours ago, as a matter of fact, that yes, we would want to try to do that, whether it's through a Google Sheet, in person, virtual, or I don't know. But I'd like to know that pretty quickly, whether it's through a Google Sheet or survey, or if there's a way to link it to a progress book that you can get an answer pretty quickly. Because we may want to re-look at that. Because yes, that could change. Absolutely. And that's part of the reason all of these decisions aren't made in a vacuum. They're all linked to one another. Moving the calendar back helps us, gives us a little bit more time to finalize some of this. Don't get me wrong. I got to kudos out to our administrators, and they have been they've been getting after it. And I appreciate it so much. So yes,
Yeah,
I
it's
think
probably
we
important
will.
to remind folks
format
too,
will be.
because I know there's some commentary just in terms of the plan evolving. You talk about the administrators. Again, we got all the administrators back on, it was the 28th of July, right? I think that was the day. And Mr. Hook, this is what, your third day on
Third
the
day,
job?
yep.
Yeah, so anyway, we talked about this some at the last board meeting. We just, want to make sure that everybody understands that, obviously we've been trying to work through this as quickly as we can. But, again, with getting all the administrators back just last week, and then Mr. Hook starting, that obviously there are still some things moving. I guess, can you talk a little bit, because I know the virtual learning model is still evolving somewhat.
Yep.
But I know we've had some conversation about the semester versus the quarter commitment. And I think, in the last conversation that we had, when we were trying to do some of our teachers trying to balance the numbers, and make sure that we have the appropriate staffing levels. I think that was some of the rationale why we went to the semester. But I believe even with the VLA, if we were to go through something like that for the 6 through 12, that's also a semester long program, effectively, that somebody would be opting into, correct?
Yes. Let's say we opted to use VLA, which is it's a software package that was developed. It's the reason you need the semester, if that's the direction we go. The reason it would need to be a semester is simply because the courses are designed to take those sequence of modules, and it's designed to go for a semester to get the full credit, to get the credit that you need. So to go into it or out of it any sooner, then that they would not be able to give you the credit. Okay. And depending on the kid, that, some kids will blow through it in less than a semester. There are some kids that take longer. And so to be able to say, okay, I'm coming back at the quarter or whatever it is, the differences in where you may be in that particular subject would be pretty dramatic. That's the real rationale that was driving that piece. Now, depending on what we come up with here in the next day or so with the Model B in the secondary arena, we may be able to back that back to a quarter. I don't want to sit here and tell you today that this minute that's what we're doing, because we still have that work to do tomorrow, and really kind of wrap our head around it, So my guess is that if we don't go into that particular VLA piece, the virtual model, if it's done with our teachers in some type of, I don't want to say it, after school, or whether we provide them planning time to create a virtual option that can be posted, that's easier to bring a kid back then. It's easier to keep them on the same pace if that's the case. Okay. So I'll have more on that. So, but that's the rationale for the semester is to get the credit. You want to make sure you got the credit. But if it's our teacher doing that model, some kind of hybrid of that, we may be able to cut that back to a quarter. So we still got a little bit of work to do on that. And that's the one that's the most needs the most attention. And like I said, I'm really going to rely on our teachers tomorrow that we have in the meeting. Say, you tell me what you need. What's the best thing, and how can we do that? And so we're really trying to, we're pulling teachers out of their vacations to come in to help us. So I want to thank you in advance for that. So
I appreciate you looking at the quarter versus semester difference now that we're changing this model, because it's a scary thing for anybody to think about going remote, and we want our students to be successful. And I totally get it staffing wise, why it would be more necessary if we went down the VLA option. But I appreciate that we're looking at that holistically now that it's our own staff. The other thing is, are we able to, I know we're going to have a commitment of August 14th, but if somebody's situation changed health-wise, would they be able to, even if they weren't diagnosed with COVID, but there was something around them that made them more compromised, would they still be able to pull back and do remote? If it's like, will we work on a one-on-one situation with one-off situations, even after the cutoff date?
Oh, I would never say never. Yes. I mean, there are always some extenuating circumstances. So yeah, if there was a unique scenario, they would just want to contact our principals, and that would start the process of looking at, okay, what's wrong here? Why can't we? And yes, that there are some extenuating circumstances, sure.
Great. And they've been working on, somebody posted about asking frequently asked questions. They've been working on a list of frequently asked questions. So I know that there's going to be a time that we're going to go through those, but a lot of these questions are also going to be answered in the list that will be online so everybody can access it.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you're getting to this later in the presentation, because again, we did talk about this at the last meeting. So just to reiterate what Ms. Babb said, there is a frequently asked questions that we've been gathering and will be posted online. And we will also be holding sessions, I believe, at the building level.
Yeah. That's my next slide.
There you go. Your next slide. Good segue into the next slide. So again, we'll get to the public participation, and we'll obviously call on individuals as they've kind of gone through. But again, I want to reiterate that you'll have the opportunity to ask these questions in a couple of different forums, and you'll have an opportunity for these to be answered, including directly emailing your building administrator. Obviously that's always an option as well. So right. Good setup for your next slide.
Absolutely. Next slide. And that really comes to our building reopening meetings, our virtual meetings. Right now, we just don't have the go ahead to go open them wide open and do that yet. So we came up with the reopening meetings, and thank you again to all of our administrators. They dove right into this. And so we're looking at a Facebook Live event. Okay, those links, and correct me, Scott, if I'm wrong, if I say something in error here, but those links will be on our website, so you'll be able to access those. And we will post those exact times. But it's likely going to be like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, both on the 10th and the 11th. Okay, so next week. And what's going to happen is there'll be a panel, but obviously the principal is the main person here in that. I might say hello, but then we're going to turn it over to the principals, and they're going to talk about their building specific points, issues. All of them have the some of the main things are the same. If you look at the questions that we're getting from our public, they all fall into one of several areas, predominantly, not everyone, but lunch, transportation, how we're getting into the building, how we're getting out of the building. Okay, those kind of things, transition between classes and recess. Those are, if I look at the questions, those are 80 to 85%, 90% of the questions that they're getting. So each principal is going to answer those that are unique to his or her building. Okay, and so those are probably going to be hour long, and then there'll be Scott, I believe, will be moderating, and then there'll be a question and answer period at the end of that. So we're excited to do that. We'll try to do the younger kids earlier. Secondary will be probably later. We'll probably just kind of move sequentially up. So we'll post those out there August 10th, August 11th, and we will communicate that to all of our parents, those dates, times, and links, okay?
So are all buildings meeting at a different time so a parent can attend every one if they had kids at all 6 buildings?
Yes.
Yes, so they could do that, yes. I do believe we've even talked about Dennis and 5 Points maybe being together, but and having a little bit longer period of time if there's any unique differences. But we try to have those 2 buildings operating pretty similar, because physically they are. Now, yeah, there's differences in numbers with those buildings, but I think we settled on those 2 doing it together, but it might be a little bit wider time frame. I don't know that 100%.
Yeah.
But yes, everybody else.
The way it's designed is it'll be set up, and again, details will be going out to the public of times and all that. But each building will have an hour, and each building's principal will share a plan. There'll be time for Q&A. So Clear Creek will have their own, 5 Points will have their own, Dennis will have their own, and so on.
And we're going to need the maximum participants to be like 1,000 or something, especially if we combine Dennis and 5 Points, maybe using the webinar or something.
Well, it's a Facebook Live event.
Oh, so there's no, because it's just.
No limit, yeah.
It's just
Gotcha.
streamed. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I believe we're doing it live, but I believe it's recorded too, isn't it, Scott?
It'll be recorded and posted, yes.
So if somebody can't happen to see, at least I want to watch this, they can do so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In conjunction with the frequently asked questions, again, I think
Yes, yeah,
have
absolutely.
a lot of different avenues for folks to get their questions.
We're going to use every option, every avenue we can to communicate as much as we can this week, maybe even to nauseam, but the more the better.
Yep.
Okay, and that's kind of I think that's it.
Okay. I know we've asked some questions as we've gone through, but from the board, any additional questions for Mr. Hook, comments for the administration?
No, not for me.
I'd like to consider something that some childcare programs are doing is they're acclimating children back in that somebody shared with me that I think would be really helpful as the board saw a lot of emails coming in, and like Mr. Hook said, there's a lot of similar questions that are coming with some main topics. If we could, even if we have the frequently asked questions, if we could use social media and some ways to just break it down so we focus on transportation. We know that there's going to be a lot of parents driving, and so using a video, this is what your first day might look like at Clear Creek, just to help people visualize it and answer the questions. If you're late, you're not going to be counted tardy, we're going to account for that or whatever, just to kind of help people prepare for that first day. So maybe break down a lot of these main topics into really short clips where people will watch a 30-second video or something on something as we go through this next month of trying to communicate the message out.
Good point.
Good suggestion.
I'm going to shut the shade here. Lights hit me in the eyes.
Other questions or comments from the board?
I have questions, but I think I was reading the chat and I think a majority of them are covered in that. And I think somebody's going to go through and read that. I did have, and I think I don't know what somebody just asked about CCP, but I did have, for people that are starting CCP earlier, since we moved our school year back, should they communicate with Mr. Martin directly with that? Or, because I know there's some textbook up things that have been confusing, just some of those things that typically happen once the school year started. Or is that part of the frequently asked questions? I don't know.
We can put that, obviously, that's good. We can put it, I would put it in the frequently asked questions as well. I would say definitely want to contact the high school, you know, if they have any questions about CCP. You know, I certainly would. I think without having them, you know, here in front of me, I would certainly want to know if there's any issues as they start to reopen. A lot of them are opening virtually.
Yeah, that's what I just read the comment. It said a lot of the mandates during the crisis to make sure that we're communicating with our students who are taking CCP and getting that message out, because that's got to go out before the school year starts.
Okay. Good. You can do that.
Other questions or comments from the board?
What is, okay, I do have one more, sorry. What is the time? What is the time frame that you anticipate? First, is there going to be a survey that they are going to fill out before they're actually just an interest of this is where I'm thinking what I'm going to do with my student? And then when would they expect that if you're going to do it? And then when do we expect a full rollout, like an updated framework, so people can look at all the details around it beyond like principal meetings that the town halls are?
Well, sooner rather than later. I'd love to say we're going to have it by the end of the day tomorrow, but I think we're going to have more after we have a chance to sit down with our teachers. You know, I think having that capacity to do that is critical. It's a piece that we need. And I think shortly thereafter, we'll have that framework finalized. I'd love to have it done this week. So that's my goal. That we're shooting at it. So hopefully by then, you know, so maybe it might be the weekend when it actually gets pushed up, you know, but we're going to push it out to all of our parents as well. So
in advance of those sessions next week.
Right.
Do you anticipate doing a survey or not?
Well, we just started talking about that today, and we're trying to figure out the best way to get that out. And so we'll probably look at some adjustment to that. And so I would also anticipate whether it's done through Google Meet or Google Form or done through Progress Book. I would like to have, it'd be nice. The more information I know sooner, it's easier to establish those classes. So yes, we're in some format, we're going to push something out just to reiterate and make sure we know, are you wanting to be in, you wanting to go virtual? And if you're undecided, that's okay. You know, we'll still have that hard, I don't even want to call it a hard deadline of the 14th because there can be exceptions, but we really want to have it in as much as we can so that we can put the final framework around this.
You know, before we go into the questions that the community has been sending, I know you previously thanked the teachers for being willing to come in and meet tomorrow. And I just appreciate that we're pulling them in because I know that it is their vacation time, but I also know how committed they are to our students. They want to be part of the solution. So I'm very confident that and asking what would you be willing and able to teach confidently. I think that we're going to be able to get to this. with a strong option for option B for 6 through 12. I think they need to be at the table. So I think this is a great plan for tomorrow.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, so we can move into item 3.4, again, which is the work session public participation. And again, just to clarify, even though I said this, I think we've kind of gotten away from this in the chat, but again, I'll be calling on people with sort of their name and address, and you're sort of free to ask a question or make a comment. Again, some of the questions, as you've heard, are still likely, the plans are still evolving somewhat. I think, we can do our best with the administrative team to try and answer what we can. But again, there may be a situation where that is something that has to wait for the, for the discussions that are happening this week and for the plan that is going out later this week over the weekend. And then again, for those sessions at the beginning of next week. And again, we'll capture obviously anything here, that from a frequently asked questions perspective as well. I think we can go through this chat and make sure that everything is covered by those as well. But again, the way it'll work is I'll go through and I'll read the folks that have kind of put their name and their address there. And then Tara, if you can help me unmute those individuals, they can either make their comments or ask the questions. And then we'll sort of ask for 3 minutes for that. Again, just in the interest of time. And again, there are going to be lots of other avenues for folks to answer questions. But again, we do want to offer an opportunity for folks to offer their thoughts during this section of the meeting on the work session items that we just went over: the calendar, the reopening plan, and the resolution that would make our teachers essential workers. So with that said, I'm just going down the order of the chat here from the folks that have their name and address. It looks like Kevin Keener, I apologize if I mispronounced that, was the first person with a question. Tara, are you able to find?
Yes, I've asked him to unmute, so he should be able to speak.
Okay, Mr. Keener.
Well,
I think you'll have to.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Hear me now?
Yep.
And thanks, you did not pronounce my name right, Keener. And thanks to the board, thanks to the superintendent, thanks to the administrators for all you guys are doing. I was just wondering what was the reason, or what was the rationale or data to justify pushing the school year back to after Labor Day? It seems like I can speak for my kids. I think they're ready to go back to school and settle into some normalcy of, seeing teachers, seeing kids, and, having the normal social interaction that kids need.
I'll go ahead and just speak to this, and Mr. Hook, if you want to chime in, since I'm the one that raised this at the last meeting. We had a discussion about this, the calendar at the last meeting as well. As you just heard, there's plans that are still evolving. Our administrators just came back on the 28th of July. Mr. Hook started over the weekend. This is his third official workday. And so the discussion that we had at the last board meeting was that we needed some more time to finalize these plans and to get questions answered for parents, to be able to give them as much information as possible when making a decision about the two options, and that it was not going to be possible to do that by the original decision date that was this Friday. And so we decided to push that back and move the start date till after Labor Day to give us some more time to work through those plans. As you just heard, obviously they're still moving somewhat, and we're trying to close them down as much as we can this week so that we can get those answers out to folks as soon as possible. But that was the main reason that we entertained this discussion about the calendar as discussed at our last meeting. Mr. Hook, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you hit it pretty well. I think it's about time. It's really, that is it. It's about physical time. And because this is such a moving target, it just gives us a better chance to do it well. We want to do this thing right. And boy, trust me, nobody wants to be in school more than I do. This is, I hear you. And but more importantly, we have to do this right. And so that's the rationale.
Hey, Jamie,
Yes, Charles.
I thought that somebody wrote in that why don't you read the question and then the appropriate person give the answer?
There is a lot of folks that have asked lots and lots and lots of questions.
Okay.
And so I'm
And you're not going to be able to cover them all.
and that's again, I recognize people have questions. Again, we've talked about this in prior meetings about how, there are several of us on the board that are parents and are making this decision as well and trying to gather as much information as possible. So certainly understand completely. But again, I think just in the interest of time, I'm trying to go through and give these people an opportunity under the 3 minutes, but
Sure.
we'll capture everything that we're not able to get through as part of the frequently asked questions. And again, people will have opportunities in these Facebook Live events that we talked about at the beginning of next week as well. So there's going to be lots of mechanisms. So there's a lot in here, but again, I don't know that we have the capacity in this public meeting to answer 15 questions from every individual. And so we'll have to limit it to 3 minutes like we discussed at the beginning.
Sure. Okay.
So, all right. I think the next person, because her address a little further down, is Mrs. Jessica Salyers. And again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing these names. But Jessica Salyers, I think, had some comments and questions at 45 Orchard Drive. Ms. Floyd, are you able to unmute her?
I just did, so. We'll see.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, okay, perfect, thank you. I had asked several questions, and I know we don't have time to answer them all. My biggest ones are, first of all, what's the plan for standardized testing? Particularly, I know the third grade, they have that reading promise. So how is that going to be handled, both in person or if we choose the virtual option? And then I'm still a little bit unclear on that remote versus virtual option. I understand that they're different, but if we do choose option A to send our kids to school, and then for some reason the school is closed and we have to go remote, why would that not just mirror what's already happening virtually? It sort of seems like there would be two online options then happening in parallel that wouldn't be quite the same. Thank you.
You want me to try to?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. Well, the idea with the virtual option, okay, and I apologize if I'm not explaining it real well, but the idea with the virtual option, if you've chosen B, is that once you start on that pathways, regardless of what happens within the state, let's say the state or we're ordered to shut down, or a building shuts down, or something changes, we're ordered to go to 50-50 or something like that. If you were virtual, you just continue to track down that pace, okay? Versus remote is I want to be in school. So as long as we're in school, you're not doing anything remotely, okay? And then if we get ordered to go to 50% capacity, or in the event we close for whatever period of time, then that teacher at that point in time within that model, within those classes, then they would just pick up right there. But it would just be where they would be teaching the lesson online and posting it per se, okay? And so let's say we were forced to close for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I still think probably it'll be closer to 3 weeks if we ever get that. But if we then come back, that group of kids would continue then right on pace, where the virtual kids that were in Model B, they may be in a completely different place in their curriculum and the coursework that they're taking. So that's the major difference right now in those two options.
Good. I realized that I skipped over, and I apologize, Mr. Williams. I did not mean to do that, but we'll go to Mr. Williams next at 205 Crockett Drive. So Tara, if you could unmute Ken Williams.
So here, let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Sorry about that, Mr. Williams. We could hear him.
See if he
Sorry, that's my fault. There's a couple of us helping and he unmuted and then I muted him accidentally. Ken, that's my fault. I apologize. And now I lost your face.
That's okay. Let me see if it, can you hear?
There, okay, he's talking. He's talking.
You good
There
now?
we go. Yes, sorry
Sorry,
about that.
that's my
Mr.
fault.
No worries, technical difficulties. I think you guys already answered my question again, the difference in if I were to send Kendall to school at the beginning of the school year this year, if we go back to school, if the schools were forced to close down or go to 50% capacity, she would have a recorded school session versus the actual live teacher in the classroom. And then that's due to what?
Well, again, I think it would be both, I think is what I'm hearing, that there would be some live instruction that's going on with those folks. If you started in Model A and then we were forced to close for some reason, I think there would be some lessons that are recorded for people that are not able to join the live portion of that instruction. Is that correct, Mr. Huck?
Yes.
And then again, as to the reason, we've said, because that Model A is intended to be sort of in person. And so the idea would be that we're closed for a period of time, at which point they would return back to in person. That's why it will continue to be taught remotely. And I apologize, I'm not using the correct word, as opposed to this virtual option, which is and again, I know we had some discussion earlier about whether that's a quarter or a semester, that is sort of going to continue on a separate track, because again, that group is not going back into the building like Model A, assuming we have this sort of temporary shutdown. So that's the reason why those two tracks don't come together. They remain separate.
Okay, so if your child learns better face-to-face versus the actual video session where they don't have the opportunity to ask questions, the better option would be to send them to school if at all feasible.
Correct.
Right. Again, there would be some, if we were forced into a situation where there was remote, there would be still interaction with the teacher. I guess I don't want to make it sound like it's all sort of recorded, or there is that interaction with the teacher, but we would also be recording lessons for individuals that may not be able to join at certain times throughout the day, given their different family circumstances. So you would have the option to do some of those lessons at later points as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Before we move to the next one, we missed the other part of Mrs. Salyer's with the testing, with how that would be handled. I'm guessing Mr. Hook or Mrs. Cook. Oh, wow, you rhyme. Thank you. I've noticed that. Does somebody have a thought on that, or is that going to be a state decision?
Yes.
Little things in life.
No thought. I have a thought on it, but I've now. Andrea, feel free to chime in on this. I don't know if we have a decision based, from the state yet. I don't think they've got that far down the road thinking about what they're going to do with that. Obviously, for those kids that are in session, we're going to have to make those adjustments. What that's going to look like yet, I don't think we can answer that today.
I would agree.
Thank you, Lisa, for clarifying that. Looks like the next individual, sort of with the name and address, is Tracy Lambert at 525 Reed Road.
I believe I may have unmuted her.
Ms. Lambert?
There's also a Tracy's phone. Could it be under Tracy's phone?
It looks like it actually came from the person in the chat was named Kyle. So it's from Kyle, but it was Tracy Lambert, 525 Reed Road. So
Okay, let me look for a
Kyle.
If your name comes up differently on the screen than what you typed in as your address, we're not going to be able to find you to unmute. So if you can let us know in the chat.
I'll try to a heads up as I'm reading these. Yeah.
Okay, I just unmuted a Kyle, so.
Not me. Not me.
Okay. Well, we can move on then.
She asked if the question could just be, somebody asking the question just be read so we can answer it.
Okay. we can try to do this again. There's a lot of different questions in here, but I'll try to answer it, or I'll try to ask it, I guess. But again,
I
there's,
think Kyle might be speaking. So
oh,
don't-
okay.
Hello.
Is that Tracy
Hello.
Lambert?
Hello.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of Tracy Lambert.
Okay.
So the question that we had is regarding masks during PE period going to be a requirement while the kids are doing physical activity?
Yes, I don't think we have an exemption from the governor's office for that at this point.
Okay.
Now, it may be dependent on, are they outside, what are they doing, but at this point, we don't have an exemption for that.
Okay. If the governor did have an exemption, would that then be relaxed for physical activity?
It could. I have to see what that is, what that order is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, I think we have Aaron Murdoch, 13 West Waterbury Drive.
Okay, I unmuted her.
Thank you. I just wanted some clarification on how you were determining how someone, if they meet the exposure criteria that you were talking about. Is it an assumption based off of who people are around, or are you watching video? Like, how are you really determining and looking at contact tracing and determining exposure?
Well, first of all, the contact tracing is done through the health department, but technically, in terms of how it works, is they would certainly contact us, or it can work a little bit the other way. If a parent tells us, then we would contact the health department. There may be a little bit of a lag time between when a person tests positive versus how quick it happens. But then what happens is they'll tell us a time frame for this kid. Okay, this kid that's test positive for say. Okay, then we're going to find that kid, whatever building it is. We're going to find out, first of all, where he was sitting in every period. We're going to go through, and so at the building levels, there's going to be some involvement of where was the kid sitting, starting at whatever date that the county tells us to start at, based on when the kid tested positive or when they showed signs. And then, so that's the first point. Then, of course, they're going to, the contact with the family will heavily be the county, okay? Because they're not just going to ask you about exposure at school. They're going to want to know everything. So did you go to church? Did you sit by anybody? And how long were you sitting by them? And what was the distance? So those are the questions that they would ask. For us, our biggest thing is that we have to have seating charts as much as possible. We'll probably have seating charts at lunch, likely. If we have to use a video, we would. I'm not going to say that's how we're going to do it. But predominantly, it's going to be through seating charts on the buses, in classrooms. That's predominantly. So any involvement where they're sitting somewhere, for 15 minutes continuously, those are the hot spots that we have to watch and look for. And then we'll help them as much. It'll be a concerted effort between the health department and us as well.
Next, we have Jamie Lawhorn, 3275 North State Route 741, and it looks like maybe the chat, Tara, is from Alexa Lawhorn.
Oh, I see it.
No?
Okay.
Oh.
Is she on?
So Jamie Lawhorn?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm using my daughter's computer, so I'm still learning. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
So what Mr. Hook had mentioned, it sounds to me, my question was about applying to lunches, right? How is this contact tracing going to be done? We know lunches are 25 to 30 minutes. My daughter will be at the high school. So I don't know if we have a plan for lunches yet, and it sounds to me like the teachers are going to spend a lot of time trying to track down students when there are issues, whether it's an isolation or possible exposure.
And again, Mr. Hook, if some of the specific questions about lunches, in the
I
building.
won't
level,
know,
we'll
I won't
later.
know those
Yeah.
because they're different for individual buildings. Okay, so those are probably going to be better answered at the reopen sessions next week for the individual sessions. So for the high school, I'm sure Mr. Martin will be addressing that, how it's functioning, as well as each building and the differences. So for me to sit here and try to answer that intelligently is probably not a good idea. I don't want to mislead you.
In terms of the contact tracing, it's the health department that is taking the
That's
lead on
their
that, and we're playing a support role, obviously, to provide information, but it's the health department.
It's the health department
on that contact tracing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Next, I believe we have Jeff Jones, 9250 Yankee. It'd be Jeffrey Jones, Tara.
We'll see if he's on.
Mr. Jones?
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. My question is about gifted services. If we choose Model B, will those services still be available?
Larry, I don't know if you want to, or Andrea can speak to the
Well,
gifted services.
and Andrea, again, yes, that's our intention. The problem with the VLA, and this is one of the other issues that we were dealing with at that is the curriculum. If we use that particular model, may be somewhat limited in areas for giftedness. Okay, so the way we're leaning right now is we would like to do it kind of like like we're doing in the K-5 model, okay, where those individual teachers can support those kids. Might there have to be a little bit of an adjustment for gifted? Oh, sure. I mean, I think you're going to have to probably look at those WEPs and make sure for the gifted kids that they're getting their extra. But yes, if we can, we definitely are going to try to do that. So to go into great depth with that is probably a little more Andrea, or even probably some of our gifted coordinators. I don't know, anything else, Andrea, that you can think of?
Mr. Wiggins and I started working on just that this afternoon, and we have a meeting again tomorrow morning to look at those students who are signed up for remote and what services they require in order for us to fulfill the WEP. So we are working very closely on this project.
Thank you.
So it could be with the gifted that they could be in a classroom remotely with students that are typical students that are gifted, but they could be in an elevated like reading curriculum or something if that's what they had qualified for, even though in the brick and mortar they would have been in a just gifted classroom. Is that?
We do have GISs that are able to assist us with remote learning, so we do intend to utilize their services and their expertise.
And I'd imagine as that plan sort of is formalized, that'll be something that is shared in our FAQ document.
Yes, we will make sure to put that on.
Okay.
Whoops.
Okay. Miss Greenberg, 225 East Manor Drive, I think was the next person who'd like to make a comment. Lynn Greenberg. Should be Lynn, I think is how it shows up.
I'm almost there. Here we go. Okay, she should be Lynn.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I obviously, as always, have lots of questions, but I'll limit it to the one I posted, which is maybe partially addressed through some of the questions about virtual learning versus remote learning, because I have 3 children and we're planning to do online, and we have 1 computer for them to share. So if there is not a recording, how are we going to get them all on there? I know a student who spoke at the last board meeting mentioned this, and I've thought a lot about it because I have twins. They're in the same grade, but they're not all in the same classes. And I have a high school student. So how are we going to, if you don't offer recordings or make accommodations, how are we going to have kids who don't have computers at home? Are we handing out Chromebooks? Are we going to maybe consider a recording? What's the plan with that?
If you choose option B, that is the plan that they're recorded. Yes. So they would be able to, and that's really especially important with the youngest kids. Let's say we have a first graders, it's one thing having a high schooler got to log on and get online. They may need to have that parent right there. Sorry, you have to repeat first grade, but that may be one part of it. But yes, the idea with the virtual is we got to get that recorded. So I think that's a critical.
Is that for all grades? Because I thought the plan before had said not recorded. They must be.
It was before, yes.
That was, I think, the earlier plan.
Yes.
I think as we discussed tonight that we would allow for, that there would be some flexibility with that option. I don't know.
And you said shortened days as well with that. If they are going to choose option B, the days wouldn't be as long, perhaps. Is that what you said?
I think that's what was said, because it wouldn't be a streaming option where you were streaming through the school day, as was the previous version of the draft.
That doesn't mean that we can't do that, or in that virtual option, it's just that teacher. So, if they decide to do it at 8 o'clock in the morning or something, they can do it, but they're going to record it. So if that kid can't be there, they can go also do it at another time as well. So that's the advantages of having that recorded. And so your other question, I think, was about just equipment. We're going to support those kids that don't have those capabilities, or access. So we'll support those kids. Most of our kids will be okay, but there are going to be scenarios that we have to help out. Sure.
Yeah, because I'm concerned about how that's prioritized, because my kids, we can make accommodations. I can leave my computer, but I'm more concerned about kids who don't have those resources, whether it be internet or computer. So that's on the radar.
You betcha. Thank you, though. Appreciate that, man.
And I think it's important too that we look at even those that have resources might not have resources for the number of children that they're keeping home. So I want us to also look at that and supplying, having a group of Chromebooks that if we need to loan those out during this, because that's that many students that aren't at school utilizing them. So I think we need to look at that balance and make sure that we're not putting in unnecessary burden on those at home.
Yep, and I know we did that when we had to go remote in the spring, and I'd imagine we would do the same.
Yes.
With this option to make sure that those families are supported from an actual equipment standpoint. Yep. Okay, next it looks like we have Brittany Davidson, 235 Whispering Pines.
Yeah, she chatted that she doesn't have access to a microphone. She said, basic question, can my child be tested to avoid a quarantine, and why are we not considering a hybrid, which would be better to meet social distancing guidelines?
So on the first question, I don't know if that's something you can answer later, if that's a health department question about when somebody is, sort of put into that quarantine group, does a negative test sort of get them?
Somebody's put into that quarantine? Okay.
That was the first part of the question. Yeah.
First part is when you get put into it, first of all, it's the health department that does it. Okay. And it's done because somebody that's tested positive, that's the first point that the health department starts contacting. They'll contact that person or that family, and they'll start saying, okay, where have you been? Or when did you come down with symptoms? I don't have all the questions there. It's quite lengthy, but basically from that, then it goes backwards. They'll contact us. We have a person, and they'll tell us who it is, so that we can go back. Okay, we need to know from this day to now, where that kid was maybe in school. Okay, so then we have to look at those 3 days. Was the kid in school? Yes. Okay, if he was, then in this class, if it's a smaller child, or that doesn't change classes, lot easier. The secondary kid, we're going to have to look at potentially 7 different classes a kid would have been in. Okay, and they're going to want to know who is sitting around him or within that 6-foot imaginary line for 15 sustained minutes. Okay, and so those are the things that we would provide them, and then they would say, okay, these people are to be quarantined, and that order is going to come from the health department. It won't come from the school, but we'll provide them that information based on where these kids sit, and they'll give us a time. They'll tell us when that through their interview with that particularly positive case, that's when they'll tell us. And so I don't know if that answers the question cleanly, but that's how it gets to it. So they will quarantine you, and then you end up having to contact them, I think, every day. Because they check
something with the health department that
with
would,
the health department.
would,
Yeah,
would
so
be
we're
that,
out.
who
Yes.
sort of ultimately releases
We just
somebody
try to
from
help them with
that quarantine.
with who those people could possibly be, and then they'll interview each one of them. So
Yeah, but maybe we can take that down as a frequently asked question or something
Sure,
we can ask with
sure.
our health
Absolutely.
department contacts and sort of answer. They can provide some clarity. And I think the second part of the question was around sort of the hybrid model, why we're not going in that direction.
Well, the reality of the hybrid, and again, understand, and I truly believe, and I'm not going to get in a debate about research shows this. I can tell you what, with the experience that I've been in, face-to-face in a classroom, that's the best thing by far. Okay, if it wasn't, we'd be remote 100% everywhere in the country. So the bottom line is we want our kids in school. The more they're in school, the more content they learn, the more socialization they have, all of the wonderful things that we love about school. You go to a hybrid. Well, first of all, you're only going to be in school 2 of those 5 days. Okay, so you're only getting that interaction 2 of the 5. And let's say you do a remote day on Wednesday, and then the other group comes in the other half of the week. Okay, you're not going to stay in the same place because you can't. Again, this teacher is going to be in the mode of teaching a live class right now, all those kids in front of them. That modality is different than being a remote learner and how you would teach a class strictly online. And so you're cutting your time on task, where they're learning face-to-face with a teacher, well, not exactly, but a half, 3/5 of the time versus a full-time teacher. So it's very difficult. You're not going to progress as far in the curriculum. You're not going to get as far down the road, which, but if we're ordered to do it, we'll do it. I think that's probably, maybe it's better than nothing. I don't know, but I think sometimes, that's going to be an issue that we do really if they force us or if we're ordered to go to 50% capacity. And so that's going to have its own logistics that we're going to have to work out as well. But the rationale really is right now, until we're ordered to go that way, the governor's telling us to go to school, and that's what we're going to try to do.
I think the next is Shannon Sherman, 2889 Station House Way. It's a question about grading, since we used the pass-fail system in the fourth quarter last year. If anybody's able to speak to grading, I'm assuming with the, if we were forced to go fully remote.
We would likely, well, I'm about 99% sure it's going to be normal grading. That's how we're going into it. Please understand, last year, nobody knew this was coming. We were flying by the seat of our pants last year. Okay, so the pass-fail, people were doing that on the run. Everybody was, just because, how do you pull this off? Because at first it was just going to be a week extended spring break. was the initial announcement. Then what it turned into was something completely different that nobody had any chance to work on or get prepared for. So no, we're going to grade normally, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person and happens to go remote. Our intention is to go with our normal grading system.
Were you able to find Ms. Sherman, Tara?
Yeah, yeah.
You found
That
me, but you're
okay.
answering the question, so I appreciate
Does that
it.
answer
Thanks.
the question? Okay.
Yep. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, I have one off email if you want. If you wanted
Sure,
to.
go ahead. Well, I mean, we can do that now, or we can go through.
Yeah, just let me know.
In the chat. Let's just go through the chat. And, next, I think it's Andrew Krupa, 18 McCullough Drive. Ms. Floyd, I don't know if you can find.
You said Amber?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Andrew. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing the last name. It's K-R-U-P-A.
I don't see an Andrew.
It was okay. You're not seeing Andrew. Okay, well, I'll ask that. It was about. I'm assuming this is distance learning. I'm assuming this means if you choose option B, would you be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities, band, sports, etc.? I would assume the answer to that question is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you're our student.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if you can find Christina Langer. It's Christina with a K, Langer, Langer, 20 Lakeview Court.
Yep, here we go.
Hey, great, thanks. I had a couple questions. One, just to piggyback on the extracurriculars, would that apply to things that aren't extracurricular, like band during the class day, not band after school? And then my other question was, you know, if my child is in a classroom with somebody who tests positive, but not technically exposed, maybe they sit 7 feet from this child instead of the 6 feet by the definition, do I have the option just to take them out of school at that point? Because with the, you know, air currents and whatnot, 6 feet versus 7 feet is, you know, it's a definition. Thanks.
Well, first of all, you'll be notified. We're actually working with the health department to develop our letters that would go home.
If you weren't in that, but if you weren't in that group, I guess is the question.
No, they would not require you to quarantine, and would we allow
But if the parent, but I think the question is if the parent wants to choose that anyway, given that there was somebody in the classroom, using that example, then what would be would the parent have the option to, even though they weren't part of that group through the contact tracing through the health department, would they have the option to move to a, I guess, or, you know, again, whatever the right word is, a remote or a virtual option? Since they, again, if they were sort of outside of that official contract tracing, that's the question. And again, we may not have an answer.
I don't know if I can answer
one that we
totally
have to,
that. We're still also working on one other piece, which I'm sure maybe some questions in there is in the event you're in school, like Christina was just talking about. If you're quarantined, if you are quarantined, you know, and never show symptoms. So we don't want you to be 14 days behind either. So we're going to develop some methodology remotely or something with that teacher to be able to stay in contact with that person. You know, in terms of quarantine, how that exactly looks yet, that's one of those pieces that we are going to absolutely have to have, because that's a reality. But as far as if I just choose to do so, maybe, yeah, I'd like to say, yeah, that's easy to do.
if there was an exposure in the classroom, I guess. I mean, I think
we'd have to look at that again.
Okay, well, that can be something we capture as a question. And again, you'll provide specific guidance in terms of, though, for, let's say you're actually in that exposure group and you are sort of directed by the health department to quarantine for 14 days, the option of how those students will still be serviced is something that you're working on. It sounds like.
Yeah. The other piece to that is you got to realize that attendance laws are still going to apply. Now, they're going to be a little bit different this year. We still don't know totally what those are. I had just met with somebody earlier this morning from the county. I mean, there's still going to be a requirement to attend school. So how does that fit? If I'm worried about it, I don't know that specific question, but I'll try to get that answer and get that in an FAQ or something like that, if that will help.
Mr. Hook, could we possibly, when you're meeting with the health district, come up with some different scenarios to put online under our COVID page? So some of the questions that have come in through email and the different ways so that parents can picture how we're handling the different situations. Yeah. I know it's not under our jurisdiction as to what we're doing, but to play out those situations, like last meeting where I was saying, put out a desk situation. If your kid's here and this kid is exposed, this is, you know, your kid would be quarantined, this one wouldn't. Because I think that we're having a hard time with hearing words, but not really understanding the situations around it. So could we get some different scenarios out there and to help people understand what it will look like?
Sure. I mean, we'll have to, yeah. I mean, I can,
I'm sure
we've got a graphic that we've been working on at the county with all the superintendents in terms of what we do. Just kind of the sequence of events that we would have to be doing. So maybe that would help too.
Yeah, I think some of those scenarios in the frequently asked questions would make sense. And I think the second part of that question, and maybe one that is sort of deferred based on the meetings this week, was about some of the specials. So when you start to get into like the secondary levels, about like the actual band, like you're taking band. And again, that may be something that is being worked out, you know, this week and will be part of the communication that comes out. So if you're in the 6th grade, you know, and you're taking something like that, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. I think those are some of the outlying questions that we're still going to establish. I think some things have happened at the high school level with band in terms of what competitions or lack of competitions there may be this year. I think that's what's happening now. We're starting to experience all of those things. So I think there's more to come with that. I think you're going to probably see a lot of schools moving away. Choir, we did find out that choir, if you're in choir, you are going to have to wear a mask to sing. And the reason is they've determined that the virus spreads a little more when you're singing and expelling air hard. And there's some examples of that as well as in band. So I know band is trying to work very hard to spread as much as they can as well. In fact, some of it they're going to be outside. But I think some of the verdict is still out on some of those events, you know, in terms of band and what's that even look like. You're just not going to see that close contact. And like I said, you know, I've heard things today about using a wooden reed in a like a clarinet versus the synthetic ones. And, you know, just, I know the music people are thinking outside of the box every way they can to try to make it as safe as they can. But at the end of the day, I think there's some changes that are still ahead of us that we don't quite know for sure how that's going to play out yet. Okay, that we're getting more guidance from. And you're seeing some areas and schools and even colleges that are even canceling, and which I hate doing. It just distresses me. You know, but at the same time, we're trying to keep it as safe as we can for as many kids as we can. So I wish I knew that specific, but it's a little bit different in those two areas for sure.
It sounds like that'll be addressed this week. And yeah, when you're okay.
Yes.
Next is Amber Schmelik, 310 Spruceway Drive. Tara, I don't know if you can find Amber.
Yes. Okay. Amber?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is my son is a special needs kiddo. He's on an IEP, and he's in the resource room at 5 Points. Remote and virtual do not work for us. Has any plans been made for the special education kids? I know Middletown and Huber Heights have both gone completely virtual, but they're still servicing those resource room kids in their schools. Has Springboro thought anything about this?
Oh, yeah.
And also policies on masks for these kiddos.
Well, that's it, you know, and that's one of those touchy things. And I know Emily Hill, our director of special ed, is listening in too. My biggest advice is talk directly with her offline. The problem, there's no pat answer. It is an individual scenario and situation that is going to be developed by that individual team with that child and that parent. And so where that lights is going to be based individually. So I don't want to say we're doing this for every kid, you know, because
so what would be the avenue then maybe to share? I mean, should people be funneling those sorts of questions about their individual specific questions?
To our special ed department? Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's the best place. You know, if they don't know Mrs. Hill, obviously they're through their special ed teacher, and it'll get where it needs to be then. So I'm not trying to dodge that question. What I'm trying to do is
tough to give a blanket answer
exactly.
when they're all right.
Could it
but I
change? Could it adjust? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not done in a vacuum, especially because of special ed laws and stuff. So,
but we're thinking about it in Springboro. We're not putting the special ed kids on the back burner.
Oh, no. You're on the front burner, if anything.
Okay. Well, I know from my aspect, my son's been through Clear Creek. He's now at 5 points, and Springboro has the best special education team around, and he needs his team. He needs to be with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And I agree with you. We have a great team. Thank you.
We do. Thank you.
So I do have a question off of Amber's. Is that something that we can consider? Because I've seen the other districts doing that, and I agree that if anybody needs face-to-face, the most people are our special needs students, because we could so socially distance them if we only had special needs students in the buildings. Is that something that because I know you said student to student with a teacher, but that's a one-on-one. That's not a philosophy of the district that we'd be considering bringing a group of students in. Can we look at that model if we do have to close down?
Mrs. Dab, I'll go ahead and answer that briefly. We are definitely looking at that. To what capacity, I can't tell you that at this point, but I will tell you, yes, we are looking at that. And what does that look like for consistency of our neediest students? We're talking about those students who may be in the resource room the majority or all of their day in particular. But yes, so we're considering all of those things, and we'll continue to work on that as things evolve, depending on how things go within our typical day start. I know there's a question a little later on that talks about related services. So students who receive speech and language services or OT and PT. If the option is chosen for a virtual format, we will provide that in a virtual format. If the option is like our plan A option is you're in class, then we will do what we need to do to keep everybody safe and you know, students, staff, everybody safe within the confines of whatever our restrictions are. So we make those decisions pretty much individually for the students, but yes, we're considering all of those things that we're discussing.
It sounds like, again, to reiterate, that people should sort of funnel those questions through their teacher or through your department, Ms. Hill, or even like a building principal to get those sort of specifics answered. So again, I recognize it's difficult to speak to in generalities.
Right. An IEP is written individually based on students' needs. So for me to sit here and give you a catch-all, I really can't.
That's fair.
So,
no, but it's good to hear people what's being considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Next, I believe it's Carrie Good, 135 Haverstraw Place, and it looks like maybe they're under the Zoom name of Morgan. Tara?
Yes.
You see a Morgan?
Yes. Morgan, are you there?
Well, I think it's Carrie Good was the question.
Carrie?
First.
Yes.
Okay.
My question was, will the students be using lockers? I know other districts are not allowing them to use lockers. They have to carry a backpack to and from class.
Mr. Hook, I don't know if you're able to speak to that
Yeah,
yet, or if
well,
that's
we've had that.
something
I've heard that discussion, and we've had that a bit. I think right now we're limiting. My understanding is, and the best way to get that answered is to tune into the individual building meetings, because I think that was also one of the questions that we decided was a common one, at least at the secondary level for sure. No, we have not gone so far as to say you cannot go to the locker, but they're going to be controlled as to how much they go to their locker, mainly because then you start congregating as much as anything. But there's also how much can I carry, and so that's going to be addressed in those individual buildings per se. You know, I can tell you on a different subject. I'm sorry that I regress a little bit here, Carrie, but I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Obviously, we are going to allow and encourage kids to have a water bottle, because our drinking fountains will be caution tape, so we don't have those accessible right now to start the year with. And so there'll be a couple of issues like that are going to just be pretty heavily embedded into those principal reopen meetings that'll be next week.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next, I believe it's Jerica Brinkman, 6903 Britton Avenue. Jerica?
I don't.
No. The question was around people being able to bring in their own barriers, like their own plastic barriers.
Yeah, I don't see a Jerica, like Jerr. I don't see any
Yes.
with that.
I don't know if we have any thoughts on that, or if that's one that needs to be sort of filed away for a question, but it was around bringing sort of your own plastic barrier.
Without knowing what that looks like, what it is, I
think people are thinking about their own little plexiglass dividers that a student would sit at their desk.
I think we'd have to determine that. We'd have to see.
Okay. Well,
Rob wants to be unmuted. Hang on a second.
Sorry.
Rob's waving frantically. Sorry.
I know.
Rob.
I unmuted you, Rob.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah. So that hasn't been a discussion amongst the building principals. So I've kind of been muted. But one of the things that we're doing is we are going through every building to look at each area, maybe the cafeteria, the commons, wherever students are going to be, just to visualize and kind of set a plan in place, for the social distancing and cleaning. So with the barriers, it has been brought up that some teachers would like to bring in their own barriers, which we are fine with. From a cleaning perspective, we have certain things that we're going to have to kind of work out with those. But as far as a student bringing it in and carrying it around with them, we haven't said no to it, but it's one of those things that we are kind of moving away from.
Are we looking at doing any barriers ourselves, like in the lunchroom or in any of the classrooms that have tables versus desks?
Yeah, in the classrooms, absolutely. Cafeteria wise, no. But what we are doing is we are drastically spacing those kids out for lunch. I was at SI today, and we put down a table. We sat at a table. We looked at the gymnasium where they're going to be sitting for lunch, and really spacing them out. Again, we're going to try to get 6 feet. We're hoping for 3. We're doing our best, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that.
Okay.
I think next it's Mrs. Franks, Stephanie Franks, 16 Heston Drive. Had a comment and question.
I've got 2 under Stephanie, so just Stephanie.
It says Stephanie Franks.
It does say Stephanie Franks?
That's what it said, at least in the Zoom chat.
Okay, I don't have Stephanie Franks. I just have 2 Stephanie. That just says Stephanie without anything else.
I guess you could unmute them and see if it's Stephanie
Okay,
Franks.
I'll do it. I've just unmuted both Stephanies.
Wrong Stephanie.
No, wrong
I'm not
one.
Stephanie Franks.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll remute you. I don't have any
Okay.
other Stephanies, so
Okay.
Stephanie Jordan and Stephanie Franks and Stephanie Cooper are the only Stephanies on.
Okay. Next, it's Abigail Hounce, 1713 Wandering Stream Way.
Could it be under Abby?
Abby, yes, sorry, Abby Hounce.
Okay, you're unmuted.
Hi. First of all, thank you all. You're in a very tough position. You won't ever make anyone happy. But I think we need to think about all those kids who maybe don't have parents at these meetings, parents, children of parents who are abused, children of parents who are addicts. We can't forget those kids. We need to make sure that we're making decisions for those kids as well. And we also need to think of those children of essential workers. So if we move to remote learning, what are those essential workers going to do with their kids? So if we say daycare is okay, how are we saying that school, which is a fundamental part of being a child, is not okay? So I'm very proud of Springboro, and I'm very happy about what they're doing. And I just think as parents, we need to consider everyone, not our own individual situations.
Thank you, Abby. Yes, I appreciate your comments, and absolutely, we take that into consideration. And we will use a lot of different methods to communicate. This is just one mode. We're gonna post and move things out. We're looking at other ways as well to try to communicate and reach all of our kids. But thank you, I appreciate that.
Amy, Stephanie Franks just texted and said her computer battery died, but Lynn has the question for her. So if we can unmute Lynn, her question can be asked.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, hang on. Let me get to it. I scrolled down, sorry.
No pressure.
No pressure, none at all. Only 200 something people listening. You're right, no pressure. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Oh my gosh, this is
I think you have her. There you go. Is she there?
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. With us not having a crystal ball and not knowing what could happen, why would we not start like Centerville online to ensure our students, staff, parents, and grandparents stay safe until we see how it works with other districts? Buy ourselves a little more time.
Well, I think, it's a good question. I personally, and what I think we're going to try to, we want to be in school. I think the difference is, number one is Montgomery County is under Montgomery County Health Department. And we're under Warren County's Health Department. Yes, we're close. Yes, there's crossovers. I don't know if it's perfect or not. I think the other piece of your question was, by moving to the 8th and moving our start date, we are watching what other people are doing. So then there's nobody that says that we won't eventually go to that if circumstances dictate it. But personally, and then I think we need to be in school as much as, if we can do it, we'll do it. That could change.
Okay, next I think we have Lori Herbert, 18 Jackson Lane. I don't know if you can find, oh, you're muted now, Tara.
Okay, I have one Lori in it. I don't.
Looks like the name was Lori Hurlbert. It really wasn't a question. It was just, I guess, a comment. So if we can't find her, it just said the hybrid model, 50% capacity, 50% content, if we are forced to close, is unacceptable. And that was the comment. Next, we have Andrea Van Sickle, 325 Fairway Drive.
Yes. Okay.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi. Because symptoms for children can present themselves differently than adults, for example, having swollen fingers and toes, has the school considered protocol for students presenting fever-free symptoms, as well as protocol for a situation where a family may refuse to test?
Well, I think our major guidance comes from the health department on that. But yes, no, I mean, if a kid is presenting symptoms, it doesn't necessarily, there's a pretty broad range of symptoms. And yes, you're right. I know in some cases that would be something we'd be looking at. Obviously, whether the kid came to the clinic or we were notified about it, we would certainly begin the protocols of contacting the parent, if it happened at school, contacting the parent and then advising them, you know.
I'd imagine we would work with the health department in that scenario.
Yeah.
If we had somebody presenting symptoms that we would sort of involve them at that point.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, we're still responsible to report that as well. I mean, if
we would report that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like we would some
Sure.
other sort, right? Okay.
Sure.
That, I think that
Absolutely.
helps clarify.
Mhm.
Okay. Next, and again, I don't know if the question still is out there because it's, I think, been covered a couple of different times, but we had Anastasia Zimmerman, 130 Sweet Gum Lane.
Okay, I've unmuted them.
Hello. Yes, I just wanted to know if we actually had considered the 50-50 scenario, just like the Centerville schools are going to be starting to do.
We do have that as we are developing that model at this point. But I'm not sure exactly where Centerville is today. I've heard some rumors that they're moving to full remote at this point, but that's based off of their health department and some of the recommendations that came from that. But yeah, no, we will have that as a plan, but our plan is still to get to full go. And just to be, do I think the hybrid is a good plan in general? It's just a plan. Nothing beats going 5 days a week. But there's some argument, and we've had some pretty good debates on our administrative team and stuff on really at that point, if we get to that point where it's we're moving into red or purple in Warren County or by zip code, our numbers have spiked so much. You know, it may not be the end of America. Yeah, we may move to a full remote. I just don't have that crystal ball to tell you exactly, but we'll have a plan ready. It's the problem you have is the 50-50 creates probably the same level, if maybe even other variables into childcare for parents. And so we're very cognizant of that and aware of it. So it'll be part of our planning, but.
Okay. I think next it is Stephanie Wygant, 9665 Lindenbrook. Weigandt. No.
Again, I don't have
Okay,
any.
it was about materials. So if somebody chooses the option B, any sort of printed materials, packets, worksheets, those sorts of things, you know, just wondering whether the district would provide any of that, or would the burden to print on all those worksheets fall to the parents? And they expressed that that was the lack of those physical worksheets was a downfall for her young student. Again, not sure we have an answer to that, but if that's
I have
something
that answer right now.
Yep.
With
But if we could capture that
definitive,
and
you know.
yep, as you guys are discussing at the building level with those options and working with the teachers, I think that's a good point and a good question to ask and to clarify. Yep.
And I think to that same point, Jamie, is the question around those that do remote and those that are face-to-face. Will school fees remain the same, supply fees, that type of thing, just to have clarification around that when the town hall meetings happen?
Good point.
And will the supply list, not even just the fees, but will the list be the
right?
same? Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Good point.
Yep, that's a good one to capture as well for your, yep. Looks like next it's Michelle Carter, 285 Janney Lane, which show up under Michelle's iPhone.
Okay. Can you hear Michelle?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for spending the time sitting on the call and taking all of these questions. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what the plan is for making a commitment between either one of these options, since the plan's not fully baked out for remote learning for grades 6 through 12. My son's going to be in 8th grade. I know that you guys need to determine the amount of teaching resources that are needed for whatever plan is selected, if that's what's going to be required, is using Springboro teachers. Are we going to have those plans in place before we're expected to make a commitment? Because I'm not prepared to make a commitment without knowing the details.
Well, we hope to have the framework, yes, solidified. We might be able to tell you which teacher it is, or who that specific is, but we're hopeful to have the framework, yes, and we'd want to have that done before you have to make that commitment. And right now we're shooting for the 14th, so just kind of keep that in, and we'll post that out there. And as soon as we get it finally framed, that piece, and like I said, I'm hoping for this week. I mean, we're pushing hard to try to get it done for that, and if we can, then we'll keep those dates, and we'll really post that heavily out there so you know. But yes, we want you to have that, Michelle.
The overarching point, and that's a reason why we moved the calendar. I think, we are trying to as much as possible provide as much information as we can before parents are expected to make that decision. I mean, that is certainly our intent. And so,
yeah.
Mr. Hook's point, we're trying to work through that obviously as quickly as possible and get that in your hands so that you have some time to digest it and ask questions via some of those different avenues before you're able to make a decision.
No, I appreciate it. I would rather have all the information and have to wait a little bit longer rather than making a decision without all the information. So thank you.
And that's where our commitment is to do as much of that as we're able to. So.
Thank you.
And I know we've kind of already talked about gifted and IEP services, but there was a question from Amy Tyler. I don't know if you see, it just said Tyler. I don't know if there's anything else that they'd like to add, but it had to do with gifted and IEP services. Do you see a Tyler?
Yes, I've unmuted a Tyler.
Amy Tyler, are you out there?
No, there. Are you there? They're not on mute right now, so.
Okay. The question was around gifted services and IEP, and I think both of those have already been addressed. That there obviously will be more information forthcoming. Jennifer Melendez, 167 Farm Ridge Drive.
Did it have Jennifer with anything else after it? Did it have her full name?
It had the full name.
Yeah, I don't have any.
Okay, we may have lost them. I think it's already been asked and answered, but it was about the student interaction or students just watching live or pre-recorded without interaction in the K-5 Model B option. And I think we've established that there would be interaction, that there would be some things that would be recorded if you're not able to participate in some of that interaction, but I'd imagine there would be avenues for those students obviously to interact with their teachers in that Model B. I think that we kind of addressed that point. Is that correct, Mr. Hook? I don't want to make sure I'm not misspeaking, but
Yeah.
yep. Okay. Vikas Varshni, 75 Sandalwood Street.
Okay, yes. I guess.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Thank you to all of you, first of all, for sitting for, I think, almost 2.5 hours, and this is probably most likely gonna go to 3 hours. And doing all the hard work. When I came to the meeting at 6, I was basically right in the center at 50%. My needle was right there, and during these discussion and question answer sessions, the needle has moved, fluctuated from 25 to 75% in model A or model B. Should I choose A or B? And right now I'm back to 50% in terms of the clarity that has been provided to us. So I'm truly hoping that before our Facebook Live sessions on 10th and 11th, we have answers to all the questions that people have come forward, so that we can ask, additional questions that have not been answered yet or have not come into people's mind. And that will help us get more clarification on, committing either A or B. So thank you again.
Yep, thank you for the comments. And again, yeah, I think we'll be capturing all of these questions as well. And again, I know there's been a lot of work done to this point on the frequently asked questions. And again, people will have avenues via those Facebook Live sessions, but then also the ability to email individually their building administrators, should there be specific questions that they need answered as well. And again, our commitment is to try and provide as much information as we are able to in advance of that commitment date. So next, it looks the next one, the name and address, Rebecca Bloom, 8373 Riviera Court. And it looks like it's just Rebecca, Rebekah.
Okay, I've unmuted them, so.
Hi.
Rebecca?
Yes. So part of my question, I guess, has been answered. So I won't reiterate that, but I guess some of it still has not. So I guess my question remains, I keep hearing that the health department's going to contact those that have been close to students, but I have a child at Clear Creek, and I can guarantee you that those kids are not going to be able to stay at their desk all day and only be around the children that they're assigned to sit by. And if they're going to have their masks off at lunch, and we just heard that they could be 3 feet, as close as 3 feet to, from each other or whatever, then it's going to be even more students that are possibly in jeopardy or whatever. So that's part one, I guess. And then additionally, if I have a son who would be in one of the gifted classes, and I know you said that this would be addressed later, but I asked this at the previous meeting and I sent an email, and so I'm still curious as to what the answer is. So if he's in some kind of hybrid here, and then like if I keep him home for Model B, and then eventually he goes to Model A, will he be put in the appropriate classroom once we go back?
Or Mr. Hook or Ms. Cook, if you are able to speak to that specific piece on the gifted.
I can take that if you'd like, Mr. Hook.
Yes, why don't you? I've only been here a couple of days, so I haven't got the full model, the gifted model down here versus my other former district. So Andrea would be a lot better to take this.
If a child scores a score that identifies them as gifted in the state of Ohio, they remain gifted throughout K-12. So if your child is in and out of a classroom, services will be delivered regardless of their placement.
And then when they came back, and they would go into the appropriate classroom to receive those services.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess the first point about the contact tracing at Clear Creek, I would assume that, you know, all of that would come into play if there is sort of a situation where there is a need for that with the health department. If they've not been able to maintain distance and they've been in close quarters, I would imagine that that would be something that the health department would take into account when they're determining through that contact tracing with the younger kids. Mr. Hook, is that fair?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Okay, so at no point is this like, is the staff member going to be consulted at some point, the teacher that's with him, and say, oh yeah, they've been in a small group, which actually I saw that a teacher asked below me this very similar question. If I have, you know, half of my students in this small group and they're close to each other for this group time, then is the whole class going to be quarantined? Is this not going to be a school decision at all? It's just all health department decision, which won't be made in I assume, in as timely of a manner as what it would be if it was being made at the building level or district level even.
Well, it's going
Rob,
to.
I think you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, if you don't mind, and then Larry, you can jump in if you want. As far as the contact tracing, the health department is going to be obviously the contact that we first make, but then that health department is going to reach out to that building administrator. That building administrator is then going to go to the teacher, and they're going to work together. It's not going to be like the health department is going to come in and bring an individual into interviewing everybody. They're kind of at the 1,000-foot level and answering questions, but we're going to be and we're going to be doing the investigating to come up with who has been within that distance within that certain amount of time. You know, it was 10 minutes. It was 15. Who knows really where that's going to land by the time we, get into that area. But as far as the groups, we will be doing that investigation within the buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Let me add one thing, Mr. Belanger, I'm sorry. One added piece to this. The in-school is going to change. The delivery is going to change a bit, okay? This isn't, a class at Clear Creek pre-COVID versus where we are now, in the middle of this, is going to evolve and change. We probably are not going to be doing as much group work that we would normally have done because of that. We want to limit the chances of exposure. We're not going to, what that class would be doing is maybe completely different and the way it's done. And again, age appropriate is part of that as well. So I just want to add to that I don't want people to think that everything's just like it was before, because it's not. And everything is about being spread out as much as we can for as long as we can to eliminate the exposures to more people.
Okay. Thank you. I think next it's Wendy Parks, 1439 Whispering Woods Lane.
Yes.
It was W Parks.
Yep. I've unmuted them.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I have one clarifying question and then one new question. The clarifying question is, if the students do successfully wear their masks throughout the day in the classroom and someone is diagnosed in the classroom within 6 feet of them, are they still subject to the quarantine, or is that only if they've removed their masks for 15 minutes a time?
Well, it used to be the mask, it's with or without a mask, 15 minutes continuous within that 6 foot space. Okay. So even with the mask, they would be asked to quarantine if they are considered exposed, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question was, has there been any discussion about any after school care, or is that just completely off the table?
Rob, you got that?
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, so we have been working with the YMCA to still continue our after school care. And we are still planning on providing that. And nothing has changed since the last conversation I had with them.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Can a family that's quarantined because of exposure get a test to show they weren't, that they don't have COVID-19 and then come back, or do they have to be quarantined even if they don't come up?
I thought we had discussed that earlier. That was going to be one of the things that was the health department.
Well, I can tell you what the answer to that is no. They, even if they could take 3 tests and they all come back negative during that 14-day period, they'd still be quarantined. Okay, and it's all about the incubation period, you know, from exposure. Now if they develop symptoms on day 14, guess what? They move out of quarantine and into isolation for a minimum of 10 more days. So that's a worst case scenario. But to your point, you can't go get a negative test and say, oh, I'm out of quarantine. Now they're gonna keep you there for 14 days.
Okay.
Okay. Next it was Christine Hinderer, C. Hinderer. Tara?
Yes. Are you there? I've unmuted her.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So we're seeing schools across the country and many areas schools starting the year virtually. What specifically are we doing differently that makes our schools safe to open? And then in that same vein, if we admittedly can't meet the CDC guidelines for social distancing during numerous parts of the day, why are we opening?
Well, I can't address what everybody else is doing in the country because I think it's all over the place. Just because it's happening in California or different places, I don't know how to answer that. You know, that's like all I can do is answer from our perspective is that we're going to try to follow the governor's directives as long as we can. In concert with the Warren County Health Department. At this point, we're open. And so until that changes, that's the direction we're going.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the next. I believe it's Heidi Jaski, 305 Crockett Drive.
Okay, I've unmuted you. Heidi?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Heidi.
Rebecca kind of asked, part of my question was, you know, in the first grade classroom where my son will be, and I am a teacher, we do small group learning a lot. And I know it will be different with COVID, but we still plan on trying to do small group. But those kids will be intermixing all of the time because 6 and 7-year-olds can't sit at a desk all day long. How is the quarantining going to look if half of our class has to quarantine, or me as the teacher who's sitting with that kid, I'm quarantined, and then what will happen with our classes?
Well, I can give you a brief, but you know, and feel free to jump in, Andrea, if you feel we have to look at different ways, you know, in terms of presenting our curriculum. We're just going to have to do that. And we have to become think a little bit more out of the box in how we do that, and where kids are sitting. Obviously, the more we put kids in positions where exposure can happen for 15 minutes, or more, my response to you is to do things less, but I'm not in your actual classroom to answer you specifically. But I think teachers have to really think differently. It's just, I get it. I really do. But we're in a different time in terms of how we deliver the information. So we're going to have to be pretty creative, I think. And I don't know if Andrew, if you feel like you want to add anything to that, that's just my initial response.
I think you make some good points, Mr. Hook. I think we also need to keep in mind that we will have PPE available for our teachers. We certainly will make certain that we're doing our very best as far as cleaning. Mr. Robinson has available for our teachers a lot of PPE, including shields that will help you to protect yourself and those within your room. So I think we need to take into consideration our PPE along with the creativity of ideas that Mr. Hook mentioned.
Okay. I think next, Megan Cunningham, 7343 Green Hill Court.
We don't have any Megans on.
Nope. I think it's, again, I think we've already kind of addressed these. It was an IEP and specials, which we've talked about. Stephanie Cooper, 39 Dinsley Place.
Yes. Stephanie? Oops.
I just got unmuted.
There you go.
I think part of my question already got answered because y'all said once you're in gifted all the time, right? Or
correct.
Yeah. Okay. My only concern was that when they were talking about getting together today and tomorrow and basing the gifted program for option B on who's already chosen it, are they doing that kind of still with the knowledge that there might be other people that haven't made that decision yet?
Yes, we are working with a August 14th date. However, we're not going to wait till the last minute. So we already have started our work within our framework as far as looking at our available staff for at-home learning, as well as those children who are participating and the needs that they have, whether those be gifted or special needs.
Okay. I figured. I just wanted to ask. So thank you for all you guys are doing.
Thank you,
You're
Stephanie.
welcome. Thank you.
Next, I believe it's Tracy Shaner, just under Tracy, 170 Triple Crown Circle.
Got one that just says Tracy.
That's the one, I think.
Gotcha. Tracy, are you there?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I just had a couple questions. The first being, you mentioned that there would be limits on locker time, etc. I know in the past, our schools have not allowed students to carry backpacks. If we're going to be eliminating some of the time spent at their lockers, is that something that we might be able to consider that they be allowed to carry this year to help them with the things that they need to carry from class to class? And then my next question is in regards to water bottles. Just for purchasing purposes, my daughter also has a medical condition and a 504 that allows her to carry a water bottle, but it's always been enforced to us that those water bottles must be clear to be carried to classrooms. Is that something that will still need to apply? Just checking for, searching for my other 3 kids to purchase water bottles for the year.
No, that's a good question. We'll answer that here shortly. I'm sure we'll probably be talking about it in the meetings, but I don't know if we've actually determined that. Have we totally? We're going to be flexible. Okay. I think is probably the best answer I can give you right now. We're not going to be so. It's a big deal not having drinking fountains. It doesn't sound like it is, but it is. You know, and how we're those kids that need water. I know we have some drinking stations that have the bottle fillers. And so we'll be able to use those parts of it, but no, we're going to be flexible with that.
Okay, good.
And can I add on the lockers? So I addressed that with the junior high and also with the high school, and they're going to go ahead and obviously continue to utilize the lockers. on a very limited basis. We talked about bringing backpacks and so forth. With the technology that we have in the rooms and the online learning, and there's not many, there's not a great need for them to carry a lot of things throughout the day. So they felt that that was going to be something feasible. Now at the lower levels, I haven't discussed that with them, but and all those lockers and everything, they're going to be cleaned daily, quite a bit. So, that was kind of one of the reasons that they wanted to just continue with that. As far as the water bottles too, at the high school, they don't have to be clear from my understanding. We have at least 2 fill stations, if not 3 in all buildings, with some of the schools with quite a number of more accessibility.
Okay, thank you. I have one last quick question. I was very happy to hear you talk about choir. My rising senior is actually in 2 of the choirs at the high school. And my question is, I'm pretty sure she really wants to be in person, but should she decide to do Model B, will she still be able to be part of those choirs? Or is that something that's even been discussed?
We've talked about it. We haven't got into a final conclusion with that. I think part of it is once we feel comfortable with that secondary framework, we'll be probably better able to answer that. It may be easier to do it. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. It's probably easier to do it in choir versus, musical instruments. So, but I think that is still to be completely
one of the things that
framed.
we'll try to answer, at the building level. Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I have a question while Rob is still unmuted. Rob, so I had heard this question earlier in regards to safety. I know that some of the recommendations are to keep doors open, to keep the air going through, but there was questions around safety with if there's people in the building that shouldn't be there, that typically we have doors locked. So what is our process? Because that's going to be across the buildings, not just a building specific. How, are we going to still keep our doors closed and locked and just open windows when we can?
Yeah, so good question. We are limiting drastically the amount of personnel we have in the building from outside. Even vendors are going to have a check-in point. We are redoing that whole process. We are still going to continue to keep doors closed. The reason why is the ventilation systems that we have in our buildings, the kind of filtration things that we have in them are specifically designed to take out the COVID particles. They're MERC 13 is what they're called. So, and we are updating those throughout the building. So we feel that if we keep those closed, we can still have good control. Now, what we are eliminating are fans and air purifiers and things like that that can actually stir up the air. So we're just trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Susie Clark, 500 Renwood Place. I think the screen name is Matt Clark.
Susie?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you. So I had more of a suggestion or rather than a question. And I just wanted to ask if you guys could consider the creation of like a digital forum for FAQs for special education. So kind of like the scenarios that were suggested earlier for the typical curriculum and scenarios, this would be more special education specific, like needs, placements, therapies. I think this might alleviate the high volume of inquiries to the special education department, but it also will provide super important needed answers for us parents who have kiddos who utilize services through Springboro. Yeah, didn't know if that was an option to look into.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. See Ms. Hill nodding, you're muted. But Tara.
I tried to unmute her, but you have to accept it.
Maybe she doesn't want to be unmuted.
I don't really have anything
add, I mean, we all are doing FAQs. I think they're updated
Okay.
FAQs that are coming out, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, potentially tonight or tomorrow. So I've gone through and updated those. The only other thing that I can add, it's really hard to answer FAQs for student-specific questions because of confidentiality.
Sure.
So even hypothetical situations, it's difficult to do that to protect students' privacy. But I have answered FAQs. They're just not out, and that is a live document that is going to continue to be uploaded. So as questions come in, I can also just encourage families to reach out to specifically our department, so myself and coordinators, school teams, so we can really work through those specific issues for specific students, and not in a hypothetical situation, but in a, what works for your particular child.
Okay, that's helpful. The other option would be even to perhaps have something similar like this, just for special education questions for those parents of students who utilize those services. That would be another idea too.
I will be attending all of those meetings next week, the forum meetings that everybody keeps referring to. But again, I won't be able to answer specific questions, nor would I be able to in a public forum with all parents involved. So just kind of keep that in mind. My responses will still have to be very general based off of privacy of students. But I will be in all of those meetings next week as well.
Okay. Thank
you.
The Google form that Emily referenced as far as the FAQs. So our COVID website has an FAQ section that's been posted up there for several weeks with numerous FAQs that we've gotten, and then that continually gets added to. The one that Emily was referencing is we're putting together an FAQ that's kind of department building specific to kind of break things out. So I'm going through and kind of tackling that. It's about 25 pages long. So going through, editing that and putting that together, and that'll be up there as soon as possible.
I think we're into the final two questions here. So I appreciate everybody's patience. It was Samantha McNerney, 22 Shady Pines Avenue. Samantha is still with us.
I do not see a Samantha.
Okay. It was specifically asking, she says she's on the phone. So her question is in regards to the delay of special education services due to the school year pushing back. I don't, that's what the comment says. I don't know if anybody's able to speak to that, or if they need more information, or that would be one you'd recommend maybe reaching out individually. Okay.
That will be an individual question. I guess the only thing I can say to that as a whole is the entire school year for all students, not just special ed, is being potentially pushed. So all students, all teachers, not just special ed involved.
He says, what will the new report date for staff be based on this new calendar, and will staff be giving additional or flexible time needed to attend and complete meetings for special education services?
Well, the start date is the 20th, I believe. Let me grab, sure.
Yeah,
that's correct.
20th for teachers.
20th is the first day, would be first day for teachers. And if there's a need to be released for special ed meetings, I'm sure that's handled through the spec ed department and coordinated with the principal.
Okay. And the last question, I don't think it's somebody that can actually speak as well, so I'll read this. And again, maybe something that has to be sort of taken at the building level, but the question was around planning the lunch seating charts, and could be placing kids next to their bullies and cause more harm than good, and kids being around sort of positive friends, especially if they are already a target for bullying. So maybe something just to capture and consider, unless you have the answer, but just how the seating charts will be done at the building level for lunch.
Yes.
And again, maybe there's a mechanism for parents to provide, input if there are certain situations to
Sure.
avoid.
And obviously if situations develop, down the road, and we have to make adjustments in those seating charts. Yes, we can
So I
do it.
just want to make sure we capture that and
Sure.
and have that sort of at the building level, and that maybe there's some mechanism for parents to provide input if there's a situation that to this person's question could cause more harm than good. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, well, given that we do have other avenues, there are, I think no more people as we've gone sort of down the list, and I appreciate everybody's patience and time as we've gone through this, but I'd suggest we move on to the rest of the meeting. And again, there will be lots of avenues for folks to ask additional questions in those sessions next week, and then again, reaching out to the building principals or referencing that FAQ document. So, but I do really appreciate everybody's participation this evening and for the feedback and the comments and for the conversation, and to the administration for sticking it out here in less than ideal circumstances to try and answer some of these questions. So it's appreciated. So with that said, I believe that we can move to committee reports, item 3.5. I don't see any listed, but I thought maybe the safety committee met. I could be wrong. Do we not have any committee reports?
Oh, Rob, hold on. He's trying to raise his hand.
Yeah.
Tried to unmute you, Rob. Did it?
Got it. Yeah, so we actually did kick off a safety meeting on the 28th of July. Some of the things that we talked about was new partitions being put up at Denison 5 Points. We talked about additional parking at Educare. Also, we are redoing our 5 Points special need drop-off locations in the back. So we have a new pad built back there. Put in some additional radios at SI. Our resource officer, Sergeant Don, is now moving from 5 Points to SI. The traffic patrol in the morning there at Edinburgh is not going to be there anymore. We have rerouted our busing to minimize the busing through Heatherwood. So that is no longer going to be needed. Additional things that the city has done with the traffic through downtown there. Again, we did a lot of bus modifications this year. And then we just briefly talked about some of the COVID stuff. Next meeting is going to be on September the 22nd.
Thank you. All right. So I think item 3.6, is there any other business required for work session? Nope. Okay, we can now move into the treasurer's report. Ms. Floyd?
Yes, and mine will be fairly quick. I will just note that I will add the safety meeting met in the minutes since it wasn't reflected on the agenda.
Thank you.
Sure. So the first item I have for you tonight is the July 2020 financials. For July, our revenue was down 3.1 million over July of last year. There are some contributing factors to that. I do believe that there's going to be a timing issue due to possible slight delays in tax collections, because we did receive $2 million on August 3rd. So I think typically that would have arrived in July, but it was just a few days late. That explains about 2 million of it. So, it might catch up in the month of August, that additional million that we're kind of short. But what will happen is in September, I will get the settlement. The final settlement will continue to receive tax advances, and then we get the final settlement in September. So I'll be able to compare delinquencies from last year first half versus delinquencies from this year's first half. So I'll be able to tell if it's just was a delay in revenue and it caught up and everything is back to normal, or if there are a larger number of delinquencies than we typically have. So I'll be watching that. Also, our state funding was down 84,000 over last July, and that's due to the 6% reduction. It's about $80-some thousand each month that they've capped it at 6% for the reduction in state funding right now, but we are still waiting to see if there are going to be additional reductions or if they might lower those reductions if the economy does somehow come back quickly. And then we also are down about 43,000 over last July for our school fees and pay to participate fees. And that's just because we've kind of slow rolled that since we don't know exactly what school's going to look like yet, we don't want to be collecting a ton of fees and then we go to some sort of partial fees or, not having, a partial fee or not having to collect some fees. So that's why we're a little bit under in revenue. On the expense side for July, we were down 138,000 over last year this time. Most of our costs are pretty fixed with salaries and benefits, utilities, some of our purchase services, but we are down a little bit. We would be down even more, but we have had some additional COVID-related expenses that have had to come out of the general fund right now. And that's because the CARES funding will not be available to be used until at least next week is when we're being told. So once that money is available to use, we'll start taking some of those cleaning, PPE supplies, some of our technology related purchases, and we'll remove those from the general fund and move them to those federal grant CARES Act funds. But as of right now, we've had to go ahead and purchase some of those things out of the general fund. So they will be reflected later into those grant funds. So the financials are posted. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me or ask any questions. Other than that, I've only got 2 other items for you tonight. I've got an approval of a donation of soil and mulch from Debbie's Mulch for 5 Points Elementary Butterfly Garden, valued at $85. And then also I have approval of a donation of $15 from Ronald and Sherry Malone for the student meal balances.
Okay, item 4.4 is the approval of items 4.1 through 4.3. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions on the financials?
Okay, Anderson? Is he muted? Yes, you're muted.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Dab?
Yes.
Balaje?
Yes.
Goods?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll now move into the superintendent's report. Mr. Hook? Item 5.1 and 5.2, I think we have to approve the calendar and the resolution on the essential employees. Okay. I think we've already gone over those obviously in work session. So item 5.3 is the motion to approve items 5.1 and 5.2. Again, the resolution to recognize district employees as essential and the approval to the revision of the 2020-2021 school year calendar. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion or questions?
I just wanted to confirm again, this doesn't force our employees to come in. This is a partnership with them, with their supervisor.
Yes.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Okay, Anderson?
Yes.
Dab?
Yes.
Balaje?
Yes.
Goods?
Yes.
Okay, item 6 is the Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Operations, Ms. Hester.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. I am presenting to you the August personnel report for item 6.1. And I did want to draw attention to lines 5 through 9. Those extended days are due to COVID-related needs. Bronwyn, our district nurse, is working overtime on protocols and some cases that we have had related to COVID. And then the school psychologists obviously are trying to get us back on track with evaluations.
Oh, actually, Carrie,
You can go through all of them, Carrie, because Dave's not here.
Oh, Dave is, oh, that's right. Okay, so item 6.2 is the approval of the athletic report for August, and we have had sports, obviously, with soccer and cross country going on, practicing protocols and distancing. Item 6.3 is our camp club report that continues to, you'll see this now for the next few months, because as we get camp fees in, they're paid out to the employees that participated in those camps.
Okay, item 6.4 seeks the approval of items 6.1 through 6.3. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion or questions?
I have a question about that. My question is around, I think our football camps were canceled, like where they go away to camp. And other than that, it was just happening in the evenings. So I'm confused as to why we're paying out for football camps.
We are actually on campus doing the football, I believe. I mean, I can talk with Austin. He isn't on this meeting to get more details.
I do know that there are like our players' football camps. They might go to a football camp, but these are the camps that they do for anybody where they can come and do the conditioning, and that's always held here on our location. And they pay a facilities rental fee and stuff like that.
But this is our coaches that we're paying extra above the supplementals.
That's not part of their supplementals. Supplementals are for our students, for them to be the coach for our teams. This is a camp to where there's a camp fee, and then everyone that participates, we have coaches, and then they have helpers, and they are paid through those camp fees. It's
I guess my confusion is I thought I thought that those were just, I'm on a football email list because of my son having played, and that those were canceled. I'm confused as to what we did have that allowed players to come in. That is, I get it that it's not the school's fee, but even if it's through our athletic fund, if the camps didn't happen, why are we paying this out?
I believe the camps did happen.
It sounds like the camps did happen.
Yeah.
I don't think we would be paying if we wouldn't have collected fees from, I think it sounds like there's a distinction maybe between the types of camps, that there was one that did not take place, but these ones on campus, it sounds like we've done them in the past as well. And again, I can't imagine we would be paying if we didn't collect the revenue associated with these camps. Can you at least confirm? I'm assuming that there's been that.
Yes,
Sarah?
I can confirm this much. Before payroll will physically pay out those fees, we have to receive a voucher. It's on a blue form. It's a voucher that is signed by the athletic director that shows this camp happened on this date and this day, and it's being paid this much for this reason. And those forms come over to payroll, and that's how they're paid out. So if there's no camp, there would never be the form that showed that they were completed the camp in order to receive payment. So they
maybe
wouldn't
that's
go on
something
the,
that we could clarify and have Austin provide, sort of offline, sort of what those look like. But
yeah, I mean, yeah,
yeah,
Carrie.
but it sounds as if these were on campus ones, right?
Yeah. I don't know what information you get, Carrie, in order to put them on the personnel report.
We do the background checks and the fingerprints to approve these people. I mean, I know very little about these camps because I think we're just the agent to pay it through, correct?
Right, you have to get them approved so that there is a checks and balances between the payroll and the board approving them. They won't physically get paid out unless we have a voucher signed by the athletic director that the camp occurred, the fees were collected, and we have the money to be able to pay the coaches out.
Right.
So
I get that. I just,
in place. Yeah.
It's a check and balance, and I guess I would just like in my head more clarification around that this was something that we've done that is outside of our regular coaching time, because I don't have issues with paying for something, and it's not even us paying this. I get
It's
that.
not us paying for it. That's, I guess, what that your validation covers the fact that there was a camp, there was fees collected, and there's money there to turn around and pay it.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And Rob, are you aware that are you aware as facilities wise, if we have had some of these events on the facilities, like, are you aware?
You talking to Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah, like for instance, the football field being utilized.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Or a camp.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but you're right. They do pay a facilities usage fee to do that. Yes.
To do
so
that.
This wasn't for just our football team.
No,
it sounds
That's
like
why
a
it's called
camp
a
like
camp.
any other
That's
camp.
why it's
anybody can come.
Yes. They're two different things. The supplemental only covers our school team, and the coach receives a supplemental for that. And then the camps is a completely separate thing, and that's something that's held in the summer only for anybody that wants to participate. They could come from Franklin or Waynesville or wherever, and they can participate in this football camp, and they pay the fee for the camp. And then the fees cover all of the expenses, including the coach's expenses.
They do the same thing for baseball.
Yes.
Done one of them for baseball.
Basketball.
Yeah, I know. I get it because my kids have participated in these.
Mhm.
I just didn't think that any of the camps had happened this summer. And so that's where my question was just, I know the concept.
Yeah, they did have, there have been camps that have happened, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussions?
Okay, Anderson,
Yes.
Fab,
Yes.
Belanger,
Yes.
Goods.
Yep.
Okay, we can now move into section 7, Executive Director of Business and Facilities Operations. Rob?
Yes, Mr. Board President and board members, I'd like to request your approval for an MOU to our contract for the classified staff, specifically for our grounds and maintenance. In the contract, we have a clause in there that we need to provide them with a uniform. And they came to me and asked if we could, instead of getting a uniform, just have them wear their own clothes with a Springboro shirt of some sort, more comfortable. And so this is a $330 a year stipend. And it's just so they don't have to get a uniform. And that's how much the uniforms cost. So it's kind of a one-for-one. I do have 3 individuals who would still like to get uniforms and 2 that have opted out to go with this stipend. 7.2 is regarding time clocks. So right now we have a system where we annually track our time for our custodians, pretty much all of our classified staff. Have our lobby guard system, which is not a time and attendance system, but we are going to be able to utilize it for that. I've installed an additional unit in each school. So now we're going to be able to do a printed report. And this is just parameters along the lines of when they can clock in, when they can clock out. They don't have to clock out for lunch. It's just assumed that these things are going to happen unless noted by a supervisor, and that would be on a manual sheet.
Item 7.3 seeks the approval of 7.1 through 7.2. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Okay, Anderson,
Yes.
Fab,
Yes.
Belanger,
Yes.
Goods.
Yes.
Okay, we'll now move to board member reports, comments, questions, announcements, future considerations. I believe we start with Ms. Babb.
I just appreciate the involvement and listening to the questions tonight from the community so that we can make sure that we get this right for academically and the right environments for the students to learn in this fall, because everybody has said it, it's unprecedented territory, and we get that, and it's a scary thing whether you're a parent or a teacher or a staff member or whoever you are. So we're doing the best that we can with where we're at right now. So I just appreciate the involvement that we've had tonight. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
Well, I want to thank our board president for assuming that presidency during a time he's obviously on vacation. So that's nice of you. And like Lisa said, it's good to get all the questions. I don't think anybody can be any more transparent than what we always try and strive to do. And appreciate all the administrators, all the work that's gone into it. And truthfully, there's a month still left that they'll be refining and changing and improving and making even better the things that they have planned today, because that's just what they do. It's all about the kids. So, and keeping the kids safe and the teachers safe. And so thanks to everybody.
Thank you, Charles. Mr. Goods?
Yep. Again, thanks to the administration and staff for all the planning and replanning and replanning. I know it's a frustrating time and things are changing daily and hourly, but it doesn't go unnoticed. And, you know, I truly believe that we're heading down the right path here. And I think it's good that we're really pushing for 5 days a week. I think there's a large number of our parents that want that. I do think it's the best thing for our kids. And I think, you know, there's a lot of folks, you know, medical professionals that believe it is too. So I think that's the right thing to do. At the same time, I'm glad we're giving people a viable option that's at home and, you know, allows them to learn at a distance. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And, you know, I'm very confident that by the time we do start up in September, we'll be ready to rock and roll, and you know, whatever comes, we'll be ready for it. So great job to everybody involved. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I'll be brief because I think my headphones are dying. So I'm not going to last long here, but Dave picked a good one to miss.
Yeah.
No, but no, I appreciate, I know we've run a little long this evening, but I do appreciate all the administration sticking with it, and for the public as well, for those of you that are maybe still out there, and for all the folks that submitted questions. And I mean, I hope, as others have indicated, that you see we're trying to listen, we're trying to adapt as we get new information, we're trying to, as much as we can, based on that feedback, try to meet everyone's needs. We recognize that's unfortunately not going to be possible in all instances, and we're doing the best we can for all of our kids. But you know, we're not going to, it's not going to be perfect for everyone. And ultimately we're choosing from maybe the, you know, the best of less desirable options. But again, I hope you can see tonight, you know, that our commitment is that you're trying to do right by the kids. You can see we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to provide as much information as possible in order for you to help make the decision. And I appreciate all of the administration's work. And for Mr. Hook, I know we've kind of been thrown into the fire here, but for Mr. Hook and all the rest of the administrators on the call tonight, I know you guys are living this and you know, living this, you know, daily, and just want to extend our sincere thank you to everything you've done, and again to the community for providing your input to help shape those plans. But again, as we have more information, we'll continue to share it, and I appreciate everybody's patience, as it was a little clunky this evening, but we're trying to do the best we can working through this new format also. So that was everything that I had. So are there any other announcements, Mr. Hook, on your end?
No, just hang in there. We'll get it done. And I just want to thank everybody else that I'm very impressed with the willingness to just roll up our sleeves from all our team here. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, and apologies to anybody that had difficulty connecting and you're watching this this recording. We'll try to sort through as much of that as we can if we should need to meet like this in the future. So with that said, item 9.1, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any discussion or questions?
Okay, Anderson,
Yes.
Bad,
Yes.
Lajay,
Yes.
Goods.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for the time. We're adjourned. I appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you all soon.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Enjoy.
Thank you very much. I'll try. Maybe we can get to the ice cream shop before it closes in 30 minutes. So.
There you go.
Bye.
Thank you.